welcome. This is Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Golvan and also from Councillor Barrett. So their apologies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And can I say welcome back, Councillor Lammas or Robbie. We use first name terms on the Children and Young People's Committee to try and be as child friendly as possible. And Kwasi, welcome too. I am going to miss Liz Turpin. You know, we both got elected in 2019. She was the only one on the administration at the time that was brave enough to vote against closing our outstanding vicarage 6 weeks after we were inadequate for children's services. So she's a big loss to our committee. I hope the independents are listening and they'll let her come back. But can I also welcome our new members to the committee? Alice. We use first names, I hope that's okay with you, but a warm welcome. And because it's International Women's Day tomorrow, there's some cakes over there. And, you know, us women, there's no limit to what we can do and what we can accomplish. But I know it was a book day today. I saw some lovely characters waddling off around Greenwich today to school and staff dressed up, which was lovely. So we've got to do the records. Oh, apologies from Councillor.
Apologies from Councillor Gurung, and Councillor Nestrov is substituting.
Thank you. The record of the minutes, I hope everybody's had a chance to look. I didn't see any issues with that, so if it's okay, I'll sign those. Was there? No? Okay. So, urgent matters. I don't have any. Anyone else? So just a warm welcome to Alice, which we already have achieved. And this bit's going to break my heart, but I know she's going to be well missed in Medway, Donna. But you've made such a difference, and I know you're just like an amazing fairy with magic dust. You know, when I first got elected, it was like wanting to wade through treacle children's services, but you've come along, you've sprinkled your magic, you've opened your wings, and you know, you've left a trail of outstanding and good wherever you go, and I think we're going to flourish. And the partnership between Jersey is so exciting. So our loss is their gain, but actually, you know, it's the first place I take my foster children on holiday. It's only a 35-minute flight, and you're just down the road, really, aren't you? So good luck. We will miss you, and to work in collaboration to somewhere nearly in France is brilliant. So thank you for all you've done for the children in Medway, and you always make sure, especially our vulnerable children, do matter. They're top, bottom and middle for you. So bless you. Thanks. Any disposable and pecuniary interests that I need to know about from anybody? No school governors? No? Okay.
School governor for New Road Primary School in Brompton, Westbrook.
Thank you, Damalola. Okay, so... Oh, Marion.
School governor for Barrelson Primary School.
Okay, thank you. Alice? Oh, it's not Alice, sorry. Sharon.
I'm a It goes green. Okay. I'm a school governor at St. Mary's in Gillingham.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a member of both the Beyond Schools Trust and the Aspire Partnership Academy Trust. I don't think there's anything specific, but obviously the attendance of the portfolio holder for education, so just declaring that.
Thank you, George. Okay, well, our theme this evening on Children and Young People's Committee is about to look at, we're scrutinising, I've just turned my page over, I've forgotten, I shouldn't forget. It's children and social care, and we're starting with Donna. Thank you, we've got 50 minutes for this part of the committee.
So, you've got two reports in front of you. One is about improvement progress in Medway, children's social care, and the second report is about workforce. So I thought I'd just combine those two things together because they're inextricably linked, and just present one presentation for you and walk through and try and just give you some of the highlights really of that report, and hopefully that will help to focus our questions. So going forward sort of first, you'll see that we had our Ofsted inspection back last summer in July 23. Overall, we got a grading of good, with requires improvement for children who need help and protection, but good across all of our other strands, whether that's the progress of children in care, the care leavers, and the impact of leaders as well. So what did inspectors find? They found that children matter in Medway. I think we've taken that strapline very strongly, and we're using it everywhere because it's an important one and probably the most important thing. They found that services have substantially improved, and that most children are now receiving the right support at the right time, and that their situations do improve as a result of our intervention and our help. That corporate and political leaders had addressed the systemic weaknesses, and it was felt that there was now a really strong leadership team trying to drive that improvement plan. And there was a focus on improving the quality of support for children. And there had been significant financial investment and significant improvements in the corporate parenting board that I think we were all really proud about. And what did Ofsted tell us we needed to improve? And that's what I'm going to focus on a little bit as we work through, was about the quality and impact of our social work practice, particularly around our adolescent work and our young people at risk of exploitation, the quality and effectiveness of our direct work, and about the consistency and planning for our support to disabled children, and also about our management oversight and supervision. And finally, really our work around our workforce. We still need to get a more sustainable and more consistent workforce in place. So moving forward to today and what we're seeing now and what we can look at, we can see that our performance is improving, and you can see it across all of our data and our performance information. Some things are still stuck. You'll still see the reds in our performance reports that come through, but generally we are seeing this upward trajectory of quality and practice and performance. So we've got complaints, compliments, things like that we look at all the time that help us to understand how we're doing. We're seeing less complaints, more compliments, more people seeing that we're doing a better job of what we need to do. Our performance across our council plan measures, we're starting to see those in an upward trajectory as well. We can see that we're doing better. 8 out of 10 of those performance measures are now where they need to be. And we're starting to see much more of an improving timeliness of when we're doing assessments and our work, really, and a reducing number of children in need across the system, which means probably our throughput of our work is better. So families get the right help right time, and they get moved through and help to step down as well. So that's a good trajectory and what we'd want to see. Thinking about our progress against our adolescents and our contextual safeguarding, I think we did bring a report here a few months ago on the adolescent restructure work that we'd done, where we knew we needed to make things a little bit different shape. So we've done that restructure in the autumn. That went really well. So now we've got our adolescent children, rather than sitting in a specialist team where we were really struggling to really be able to manage the level of those needs, they're now across our whole children's social work. And we've got more capacity to deal with that work. So we're seeing that those children's casework is better dealt with, it's more responsive, less complaints in that area, and that there's more resilience to do the work there. Our missing and exploitation discussions are now held in the service, and that helps us to get a better understanding of risk for young people, and much more of a better understanding how to drive their risk management plans, because the staff are more connected to that and more driving it as well. And we're seeing an increased oversight of the children when they do go missing from our care. We are seeing that, and when they're going missing from home. So thinking about our progress for our disabled children, we've got was an area you'll know. I think we've got quite a lot of scrutiny on before about how much our performance was poor in that area, and we were struggling to really deliver the kind of timely help and support that young people needed. You'll see up here where our picture around our performance is a much healthier place. We know we're doing our work in a more timely way. Children get help in a more timely way. Families are getting better support. We're reviewing those annual care plans much more effectively than what we were before. We had backlogs of things like that. We haven't got those sorts of things. We restructured the service in last summer, and that's really helped. So we've created it back to a children's team, and our adults' work is separate, and then we've created a transition team in the middle, and that started to help focus our transition planning better. We've still got work to do in that area. It's not where it needs to be, but across that whole space for children coming to get help, they are getting it in a more timely way and getting the right plans. We've had extensive work that we've done about commissioning, better offer of services. Still got more to do, but certainly seeing a much better offer for children and young people. Families can come and get help. We've got much more offer on our framework that we have, where we provide short breaks, floating support and foster care that we didn't have before. So families have got a better offer. Not the full offer we need to be yet. We've still got work to do. James's team and other parts of the service are still trying to develop that further, but it's definitely moving in the right direction. And thinking about our sufficiency, we've got obviously had the challenges we've had about children's homes for children. There's been a lot of work to develop that strategy. That was through James's commissioning team, as well as children's services, where we've really created much more focus on a place to call home and trying to get more homes available for children in or near Medway and a better offer to them. So there's been a lot of work in that space around creating a framework so that we've got more providers that can offer those homes for children and more arrangements and support for them as well. There's been a lot of help around making sure that we review and look at those placements as well and make sure that children are getting the help they need in them. As it says there, we had over 150 young people placed in homes throughout the year, so that's an extensive amount of work, as you can see. And we've had our unaccompanied minors that are now in our care that are getting the right support at the right time. They're coming through in those 10 days to get the help they need and get placed where they need to be in good homes. And lots of work going on in the quality assurance area about trying to make sure that the care that we provide for children, whether that's children's homes or foster homes or supported accommodation for some of our older young people, that they're getting the right help, that we're making sure those providers are doing the right things and the quality of the care is as it should be. And we've opened our second emergency fostering provision to try and provide urgent help that night when we need a child and we need a home for a child. And our short breaks strategy has been launched as well. So there's been a lot going on. This has been a really busy area of our work, and it's actually led to some really good outcomes for children. And Eden House, as you'll know, we're hoping to have that up and running, just waiting for that registration to be submitted to get it back up and running with Ofsted and get it registered again to offer homes for children in Medway. Just thinking about the quality of practice, that was something obviously Ofsted told us we needed to sort, and it's been something that I've been scrutinised of repeatedly when I've come to this committee. I think I regularly have lots of questions, particularly from Councillor Johnson, who's not here now, but about what's going on with your audits, and it's not really getting enough in the upward trajectory way. And this shows you, I suppose, what you'd want to see. It's starting to show you from where we were in 2020, or late 2020, early 2021, where we had a lot more work, where we had a lot more inadequate work. You can see as children's casework's being recorded as inadequate, and that blue line shows you where we've gone from having over 60% of inadequate work to today we're under 10%. So you can see that over time, and the opposite, you can start to see the requires improvement and the good work going the opposite way. So that's quite a good acid test for us, because this has been reviewed repeatedly by Ofsted, and they tell us we're doing well with our audit and our quality assurance work. So we could be quite confident. We've had quite a lot of external scrutiny, and we know that's going in the right direction. And in an equal way, you can see here, management oversight and supervision was an area for us for practice that we needed to improve. And you can see there the level of inadequate work going downwards on the blue line, the green line good coming up. Still quite a lot of work in requires improvement, and this has been one of our tough nuts to crack and one of the things that you'll want to keep an eye on, I think, as a committee, but certainly moving in the right direction. And in workforce, I think it would be fair to say, other than sufficiency, it's our biggest challenge. You can see it's a really difficult national context. Work is going in the wrong direction. We've got an increasing number of social workers nationally that are not coming to be social workers anymore, increasing reduction in social workers in the market, as it were, and an increasing number of vacancies nationally. And we mirror that. And probably we've got some more challenges as well in Medway that leaves us between a big shire county and lots of higher costing London boroughs. And so we're sort of sandwiched in the middle of there. It gives our landscapes a little bit more of a difficult one to a challenge to work in. So we are still experiencing those challenges in that space. I think what we're starting to see positively is our grow our own model, which we committed to, I think, in 2021, 22. You're starting to see that really, that investment and that connection to that work started to pay off. We're starting to see more of those grow your own social workers that we're bringing in and training ourselves and getting ready. More of them are staying. We're starting to get a more substantial group of them. And we've had quite a lot of investment. And we've had 12 join in the autumn, and another, I think 5 or 6 due to join in the spring, and then another 12 in our next bundle. So we've got quite a growing population of staff that we're bringing in, unqualified, supporting them through that space, really. And that's what we think is our way out of creating sustainability. But it is it's a long haul thing. It's not something we're going to achieve quickly. Conversions, we're starting to see some of our agency staff are starting to come across and say, actually, I'll come and be with you permanently. So we've been doing a lot of work in that space to try to achieve that. We did have some project teams that we've been moving on, and we've even had a couple of staff that have come from high-costing project teams into that space as well. So that's really successful for us. But despite all of that, our social work turnover still remains high, much higher than we want it to be, and we need to keep driving, trying to get as much sustainability and keep people with us and retain them as much as we can. And our vacancy rates, although high, have been stable now for some considerable time, whereas nationally they are seeing an increase year on year in vacancy rates. We've got a lot of work in the workforce space. I'm not going to do all the detail with you now, but we've invested in additional capacity to try and drive recruitment, because it's getting in the market, getting our foot in the market and trying to be a market force in there, as well as trying to keep people with us by making sure we're doing a good workplace offer. So there's been a lot of work in that space. We've done a lot of work to understand our glide path really for this coming year, about how do we move from having a more sustainable workforce, how do we move from having the project teams we've had that were more high costing into trying to move into a more permanent situation, and a lot of work around our digital communications, trying to get out in the market, sell our good, tell people they want to come and work for us because it's a lovely place to work, and trying to connect people into Medway. You'll see we've still got some of those challenges and some plans to do that. We've got a big Grow Your Own campaign, as I've talked about, a lot of work around trying to retain, train, support our staff and our workforce, work around trying to drive the agency market better so we've got better control of it. And also about trying to develop our analysis and our understanding of what's happening with our workforce better. Those challenges do remain across the whole system, sort of moving beyond just workforce. Due to the pressures we've still got vacancies, quite a number of vacancies, as I showed you back there, quite a high number of locum workers, and still some pressures around caseloads, and you'll see that in your performance reports that we always talk to you about, and we are always constantly working on that. That does create some of the pressures you see still in our performance data, so visiting is still not as timely as you want to see. That's because we've got these gaps in the system, and it's hard for workers to do everything as timely when there's not as many of them as we need to do the work. So it brings those challenges. And you'll see that through the timeliness of our assessment work as well. That front end of our system has been quite challenged, really. And then our placement stability. We've had more movement for children in care. Their placements with carers in homes. A little bit more instability for some young people, particularly that adolescent group. I think we've got a lot more children with a lot more complexity since COVID that we're seeing the impact of. And perhaps sometimes less resilience, I think, for people to care for them as well. And those continuing challenges about our health timescales, our health assessment timescales. And then just thinking, going forward into the next space, I suppose we've got a challenging landscape ahead, really, not just Medway, the whole country around social work practice. There's a massive national reform programme that is wanting to reshape social care across the system, and whether that's things like our working together, our framework of procedure that we work within, to our social care national framework, which is trying to develop more outcome-focused thinking, to a whole range of raft of work around children in care, the sufficiency market, fostering data, digital analysis, and kinship. So it's a really quite a progressive market at the moment out there that we've got quite a lot to shape ourselves. So we can't sit still. Although we're in a better place and we're moving in the right direction, we've now got to move into that next space of transforming ourselves to respond to that more national picture, really. Sorry, went the wrong way. And that's it from me. Just a little reminder that children do matter in Medway. So I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Donna. Any questions? Mark, I see. Anyone else? Robbie? Okay, we'll take three if that's okay. So we'll go Mark, Robbie, Smither, and then I've got George, but we'll do three at a time.
Thank you, Chair. Can I first of all thank Donna for the very interesting presentation, very clear. The only thing is that the acoustics in St George's Centre I still find challenging, so if the questions I'm about to ask, I've missed the answers in the course of what Donna was saying in her presentation, I apologise in advance. But just focusing on a couple of things, in the report, the first report that came tonight, Improvement Update, Para 5.4, it talks about vulnerable adolescents. Can I be sure in my mind that we work across children's services, moreover across the whole council, in tackling the issues of vulnerable adolescents? By that I mean I was raising a question in relation to community safety at a regeneration scrutiny meeting a little while back, and I asked community safety how well they tied in with the youth service. So I think I would at least like to ask Donna whether the youth service are in the synergy for tackling some of these issues, such as missing young people, and anything she'd like to say about work across the council as a whole for vulnerable adolescents. My second question was in relation to something I thought I heard Donna say, because of the poor acoustics, that complaints had fallen off at a particular juncture in her presentation. Now, I'm a great believer in complaints. Perhaps it's why I became a counsellor, because I think you learn from complaints so much. When I was a chair of governors many years ago at a school, frequently the head teacher was telling me they couldn't get hold of a social worker, there were workforce issues, perhaps messages were left on voicemail. Could the Assistant Director give me an honest appraisal of where we are in terms of relations with head teachers nowadays? What is the feedback, in the time we've got available? Perhaps Donna could give me a little bit of a flavour on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to answer that?
So I'll take them one at a time, if that's okay. So vulnerable adolescents, we do work across the whole council, so there's lots of different spaces, whether it's youth violence, whether it's our missing exploitation work. Roy happens to be here actually from the youth service and sits in children's social care or children's services, and that's inextricably linked. He's part of our management team. And the youth service is a really critical part of a whole spectrum of work for children and adolescents, about how do we keep them safe in spaces, all different spaces, and that's from the earliest intervention, which Roy's work does in a much more global way for young people, across to our highest level of intervention. We've got children in care that are really high risk and they're subject to deprivation of liberty, and we've got them in secure care because of the level of risk there is to them. So that is a much more joined up system, and although Ofsted did have some criticisms, I think we've improved that since then, and that was about the criticisms I think we had was about some of those high-end children that were really at high levels of risk, and about whether our things were as joined up in the services they needed to be. And also the offer of support that we had wasn't as strong as it needed to be, because the teams that we had them in just didn't have the resilience to do the work. So that is better, but we've still got work to do. So I'm not going to promise you it's all done, because it really isn't. Our missing work is better. We are definitely responding much more in that space. Roy's team's done work with whether that's going to train stations and trying to keep the kind of connected to young people and trying to reduce risks for them in those spaces, or hospitals. And then we've got all of the work we do in our teams and across services with the police, with the housing teams. We're all working together around some of those issues to try to make that safe space as safe as possible for young people. In terms of complaints, I agree with you. I want to see complaints. And we do have complaints, and we have plenty of them. I suppose we see less, and we've got a different process for managing the complaints. So some of them are dealt with in a different way than that very formal sort of 3-stage process that helps us to get responses to families in a different way, and it helps us to connect with them different. We're doing a lot more work where, I went out last week, or a couple of weeks ago, to a young person who was unhappy with the service. I went out with the head of service and talked to the young person, and we talked about how can we make it different. His experience of his concerns was a while ago, but it was still as real for him today. We talked about how he might help shape our training for social workers so they can understand young people's experiences and learn from what hasn't worked very well for him. So I think we are much more driven by that, and I think it's really important. And we do want to see complaints, and we have enough of them. Enough of them land on my desk, and we do respond, but we've got a 2-tier system. So some of them are dealt with less formally. And we also have compliments, and we're seeing an increasing volume of compliments. In terms of your question about head teachers, Leanne chairs a regular meeting with head teachers. My head of service goes to that meeting. We hear head teachers' feedback as a whole group of head teachers about what works, what doesn't, looking with them about the issues they have. We have complaints from teachers, obviously, and we pick them up. And we don't get it right all the time. We're not getting it right all the time. Social workers and people, sometimes we don't get everything right. But there is quite a strong system for being able to respond to that and to deal with it. And Leanne's head teachers group that Celia also sits on, it is a connection really across the leadership team about being able to respond to the issues that they raise.
Right, Smitha?
Thank you, Joe. So, Donna, I also wanted to start with congratulating you on the report, but also just all the work you've done with Children's Services. I agree with Joe, you'll be very sorely missed. Obviously, your achievements are being recognized, hence your new role. I don't know how you feel about being described as a fairy, though, but that was an interesting one. But I know the, I know the sentiment behind that. It's good to see all the improvements. It's really encouraging. I have a couple of small points. So where you said the vulnerable adolescent service has been merged with wider social work service, and it sounds like it's actually worked out for you. It sounds like it's helped streamline everything. But I just wondered, have you not lost any specialist knowledge there? Which, I mean, don't they have different needs from, say, adults who are in the social care system? Are you finding that? Have you had to retrain, upskill staff, because it's a whole other kettle of fish, isn't it, looking after adolescents and social care. So I'd be curious to hear about that. The other question I wanted to ask was, there is section 5.7. It says there has been a concerted focus on throughput of work to support our principles on the right level of service delivery for each child, and this has resulted in a reducing number of children in need open to the service. So I'm not sure I understand that. Could you just talk me through how that works? Because my worry is this some kind of statistical juggling where you're moving numbers between different boxes and saying actually it's reduced, but the real life outcome is actually the same number of children. So I would be grateful for an explanation on that. And I had a third question, but I seem to have lost that, so that's fine. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. So around the adolescent work, I'd agree with you. So I think when, I wasn't here when the adolescent team was developed, but I think it was developed in the basis of, let's put all of this expertise into one space and try to build a team that's enabled to respond in a specialist way to those young people's needs and their complexities. You know, you're dealing with youth violence and exploitation, they're quite complex issues. And I think that probably was well intended and maybe the right decision at the time, but consequently what you have is quite a high number of young people all in a very small team with really high levels of need. And the impact of that is that those workers are working in that high state all the time. And with the challenges we've got with workforce and sustainability and vacancies, you've got then a very small group trying to really manage really complex needs with gaps. And that, I think, created a risk for us that felt untenable for me personally when you were looking, because what we weren't doing is we weren't doing a very good job with those young people, and they need the best help because they're the highest risk. And so moving them into those social work teams, we've got 8 social work teams instead of 1. We've got, 8 managers, team managers, 8 ATMs, 2 service managers. There's a lot more capacity to be able to give the oversight, the management oversight you need to, because those young people's plans need really tight oversight and care to make sure that the planning is safe. And we weren't able to do that in that small team space. And then moving them into the adolescent, what we were finding was, despite the fact we wanted to create this specialist team that would do this really great work, we weren't getting the specialist workers because they weren't really out there. So we had social workers with the same skills as a lot of our other social workers dealing with all of the complex children in one small group. So that creates quite a risk. So bringing them across to the social work teams, what we've created is more resilience, more capacity. So we've got more oversight. I've got less worries. Less of those children come to my attention because of worries now. In terms of the specialist knowledge, recognising that, because it's a really important thing. James's team in commissioning has been working to go out on the framework, to go out for specialist support, to build an offer where we've got places like some of the London boroughs that have got really high-end specialist exploitation workers, people that really can do that really expert work, so we can buy that off a framework and we can bring that in to wrap around the child with the social worker and the multidisciplinary team and do that around the child's day-to-day care plan. And we think that'll be a much more specialist and better offer. And then alongside that, we've got work with Roy's team in the youth service, who's looking at how we create more of an offer from the youth service to help wrap around those young people as well, to provide that much more expert youth intervention that they have, that social workers don't have that skill. And so we think with those two things together, with a wraparound package with the social work practice improved and better management oversight, we're more likely, and we are seeing some improved work really around young people. So I'm much more confident about that. And then in terms of the throughput question, it's interesting because it's always a difficult thing to write in a report to talk about throughput for children, because we want them to have the right support and care at the right time always. And you put them in, we start talking about throughput and it sounds like we're just trying to close everything. And that's not really what it's trying to say. It's saying last year, I think we got into quite a challenging space where we had a real increase in referrals and contacts and work coming in, children's needs escalating. And that was significant, the volume of work that came in. And the system couldn't really quite manage it. So that's why I brought in the project teams, because we were struggling with resource and capacity. So we brought those teams in. And what that meant is we had a lot more work in the system. And it meant that things also were going slower for children. So because you're under strain, you know, if you're a social worker and you've got a lot more children's cases to hold, then you're not going to do things as well and it'll take longer. Inevitably, no matter how hard you try, it's the best you can do. You work to the best of your capacity. So those workers will hold more, things will slow down, and the whole system slowed down a bit, really. So we ended up with children on plans, child in need plans for longer. We didn't get through the work as quickly. So everything, that means we get a bit more of everything in the system. So what we've been trying to do is work through to get those children's plans moved through, to get them stepped down to early help, or to step up if they need to get the children's plans in the right part of the system, or if they don't need to be in the system, to help them get moved through. So it's been quite a considered piece of work. It's not, we haven't just shut work. We've been working with families to try and make sure the plan's in the right place at the right time for them, if that provides.
Robbie, welcome back.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry, get used to it. Thanks, Joe. My question is about the cumulative annual turnover rate. I appreciate the national issues, but my questions are, how can we retain more staff? What is different from the retention plans this year than the similar report I read 2 years when I was on this committee? And in the report, it talks about, is it time to improve the offer? Could you expand on what you mean by that, and how much more money, if that is what you mean, needs to be put in to sort of retain these staff? Because what I can see in the report is a really good job in recruiting staff, better than some other areas, but having the problem of retention, probably because of the workload, stresses and demand that you alluded to earlier. Thank you, Chair. Joe.
So I don't think things are different. I think that the national context is tougher. What we're seeing nationally is things are getting harder for everybody. So we're in the same place as everybody else. So I think our turnover rate hasn't really shifted. What we're seeing is that we're probably doing better at grow your own. So we're starting to get more social workers through that route. That's starting to grow us a growing volume of workers in the system. Our turnover rate's affected by our locum rate as well, and you'll know we've got quite a high locum workforce, so that's in the picture as well. There's more movement in that part of the system. So I think I wouldn't say it's different. The national context is more challenging, and we're holding our own in that national context, is what I'd say. And the national context, the vacancy rates going up, we've stayed the same. We've sort of flatlined, and what we want to see is it going down, and we're not quite achieving that yet. And the reason why we talk about that, do we need to look at the offer, is because we've tried the the market, to try to drive the market. We think we've got more work to do there because I think we haven't been as proactive as we've been able to be. So we've put some more HR and recruitment capacity in over the last 3 months to try and see if that helps us to really drive that a bit better, get better foothold. And I think that will deliver results in the coming months, but it's probably a little bit early to show you that. So I think that will be a winner for us in that space. I think the newly qualified, those grow your own, will be a good thing for us. But alongside that, I don't think we can stand still, because nationally the workforce, like it is, it's not just in social work, it's in most professional areas. You know, the pay is going up, people are more competitive, the market is more challenging, and we have to make sure we stay on top of what everyone else is doing. We do think we're competitive, so we're benchmarking all the time, double checking, but I think we have to go back and do that again. You know, we've got an offer where we you know, retention fees and things like that help. We would want to make sure that we're always staying ahead, and that's something I think we need to do again. The last time we've done it would have been over a year ago. We should retest it and retest the market and be confident that, are we doing as good as we can? Is there something better we can do?
You happy with that, Robbie? Yeah. Okay. George, then Paula.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. A couple of things. I mean, firstly, I just wanted to say thank you, Donna. As Smitha and Joe said, you know, for your service to Medway, I think you've done an incredible job that you can be really proud of over the past few years, you know, driving that improvement journey. And I think, you know, we're all immensely grateful, and I'm sure our residents are too, for the work that you do. And I know that the hours that you often put in throughout the week, and often late into the evening when sometimes you reply to my emails. So I appreciate it. Just a couple of questions. I think Councillor Lammas picks up a very interesting point, particularly around workforce, because I think that is the key. I think in any organisation, getting the right people in and ensuring they stay there, is so important to ensuring long-term that both you can drive the improvement, but also that you can sustain it. I just wanted to pick up, obviously, I know the Grow Your Own stuff, has been progressing really well. I just wondered how the latest recruitment round have been going, because I know you've been focusing just specifically on social workers. I was just interested to know how that campaign was going. And just interesting more broadly about the sort of marketing around children's services in Medway. I know we've done a lot of good work, particularly on the back of the Ofsted inspection. I'm just interested to see how that's flowing through, because it was interesting. I saw the other day, I was on the train, and colleagues might be interested in this, and I picked up a post, came up in my feed, that I think Laurie had commented on, which was actually one of our staff that had received an email from a local head teacher and posted it onto LinkedIn. And I just think the power of that kind of stuff, and seeing some of our social workers doing that kind of stuff. I'll send you the thing later, because I just thought it was a really incredible way, and it got quite a lot of engagement, incredible way of showing off, the really great work that our social workers do, but also the work that really, and sort of power of marketing through LinkedIn and other sources of our own people actually just posting what they're doing on a day-to-day. So just interested to sort of know how that's going, and maybe linking in with the marketing and communications team around getting some of our staff to do a bit of that, because it's quite easy to do, but as I say, I think it's really powerful. So thank you.
So in terms of our latest campaign, we haven't done as well as what we'd have liked. So we did a lot. We've done quite a lot of campaigns in quite a lot of different spaces, a lot on the back of our good. We've had quite a lot of marketing. We've run a video about children, trying to draw people in. We've done quite a lot of digital marketing as well. We've been trying to do a lot more on LinkedIn and a lot more on Twitter to try and raise our profile. And I think it's probably all of our work in the evenings. Probably we all tweet on Twitter and try to get a little bit of ourselves out there. So, but the market is so challenging. The volume of social workers is reducing. We're all competing in the same pool, really. And it's a buyer's market, I think, really out there. So we've had some conversions. We've done well on conversions this last month. We've just started to build a new dashboard to get a better sense, a better analysis, because we haven't had that. That's started to help us see about how we're doing month on month. That's starting to help us see a better trajectory, and work's underway with that. And we've tried this new way of having a campaign. So we've tried social workers and just focus on that, and then run that as a proper campaign, end it, rather than what we were doing was just always open. And then it kind of, people get a bit desensitized, I think we were thinking. So we've had a really significant pot of money, funding for those, you know, the whole marketing campaign. We've invested heavily in that. We've been doing job fairs. We've had work with the sector, with the agencies, trying to look at, you know, either conversions to our own staff or meeting with the agencies about getting new staff in. So there's been a lot of work, but I think what we're doing is treading water a little bit, and that's why we're thinking about trying to think a little bit differently. So some of the marketing stuff we've been doing on top of that is we have been doing, I do a Friday email that shouts out staff. So I know about that one you're talking about because I've had that come to me and it's going into tomorrow morning's email. So, and so every week staff across the whole council, across the whole service, write in and say such and such has done this fantastic piece of work. We've done really well. So if you'd have seen our video campaign we did with our recruitment, which was thank you to my social worker, and actually what it was feedback from parents, carers and children about thank you social worker, you did this, and it was quite a nice campaign in terms of showing that actually social workers do good work. It's not all the negative press that you see. And those shout outs, what we're going to try and do more of now is trying to bring that into that domain like you're seeing, to try to get a more positive message out there. So that's some of the work that we'll start to perhaps hopefully see more around that more positive marketing.
I was just going to say now, it's all brilliant. Thank you. I think it's just really impressive. I think it's just that always pushing a positive message, because there's often, you know, so much negativity out there. I think sometimes actually just countering that with a really positive narrative is so powerful. So thanks for all you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I've got a couple of questions. The first one's just clarification. Under 6.2 on page 22, there's no risk rating for the challenge of finding the right homes for children in our care on my papers. I'm just wondering what the actual risk rating is for that currently. The risk rating for the challenge of finding the right homes for children in our care. It's not on the paper, so just would really like to know what it is at the moment. And then I've got a couple of questions around workforce as well. I'll just get to the right pages first.
Did you say 6.1 on page 29?
6.2 on page 22.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Thanks.
The acoustics in here.
I know. I find it really hard to actually hear with the echoes and the feedback. The other questions are around workforce. The first one is on report 5B, 3.4. You mention that the impact capacity across the teams, both in terms of caseload numbers and employee well-being. What steps have been taken to ensure employees' well-being is being put front and center? That's the first one. Second question I've got is around staff turnover. We're well aware of the challenges. You've talked quite extensively about them already. Hold on, I need to get to the right page. But it relates primarily to the recruitment glide paths that you've got. So you've talked a lot about the challenges we're currently facing. My question is, have you made adjustments to those glide paths? Because we're 18 months out to hitting those targets, and are we going to hit them, I guess, is my question.
Thank you. I couldn't quite hear the first one, but I think you're saying about the challenge about finding the right homes. What is the challenge?
Yeah, the first question was to do with staff well-being and what steps are being taken to ensure that the well-being of our current staff is being front and centre.
So we've got an extensive wellbeing offer, and I think it's something we do well in Medway. We've got what Councillor Perfect was just talking about was around Laurie and our principal social worker. In that team, we have a practice development team. Those staff are there to really provide practice development support, coaching, help, training and welfare to our workforce. So we have weekly well-being groups. They offer staff coaching, they offer individual development and support for staff, they wrap around managers, they do workshops, we provide personal development for staff where they may be struggling with a workforce issue or practice. I think the offer's really good that we've got here. I'm really quite impressed with it, and I think Laurie's grown it well. And I think staff get good support, whether that's around diversity, culture, different issues that they come across in their day-to-day work, or whether that's more about the whole of how we do social work and how we practice. That team also wrap around the newly qualified social workers, and they get a really extensive support and development plan, backfill to their roles when they start, so they're not under pressure to take new children's casework, so they've got time to grow into their space. So I think that's quite a good offer, generally. In terms of your next question, you talked about turnover and that have we made adjustments to the glide path. The glide path is a new thing. It's what we've created because, so we had 3 project teams. That they were high-cost teams that we brought in because we had pressures in the system. So they came in for a time-limited period to be in the service to try and help us move that work through that we talked about. And in doing that, we've sort of found it challenging to get that into the space to start help moving those teams out. We'd obviously budgeted for them for a time-limited period. And so the glide path has been developed to say, we've got 3 teams, that's an extra 18 social workers. How do we go from having the extra 18 social workers to not needing those 3 teams because we get them into our stable workforce? So we kind of mapped in, we'll need this many newly qualifieds in our Grow Your Own to tip the balance to be able to release the teams. So that's the work that we've been doing, and we've released 3 teams so far. The adolescent team we released before Christmas, and we've had two teams since, project teams. And we've got to the 3rd team. We thought we'd be in a space to be able to, we hoped we would, to be able to downstream that in the end of March, and we're not, because we know that the caseloads are high enough and we need to stay where we are and just have a few more months doing what we're doing so that we're in a place to do it in a safe way. So that glide path is doing that. It's helping us to analyse how do we do that safely.
Yeah, but my question was, given the challenges you've mentioned, is it realistic that we will be able to transition to what you're saying we're going to hit in Q3 2025?
So we think so, because how we forecast the rest of the glide path is saying, what we know is if we tread water as we are now in terms of our creation of new workers into the system, the glide path that we've got built now is based on our newly qualified Grow Your Own scheme. So it's trying to build that up over time rather than relying on necessarily recruiting heavily when we know the market isn't where we want it to be. So we've tried to build a slower glide path that we know is more realistic to deliver.
Okay. Joe, if you would let me, I've got one more question. It's to do with the increased staff capacity in HR. Is that now in place?
Just in the process, I think we've got two range 3 workers that are going to come in to help do that work. We've had one extra post, which is a workforce lead, which we use DFE funding from this year, and we've just done an investor save for, so that will be in place, and a bit of project capacity as well. So we hope that extra capacity will help to drive the market, which is what we've got to do. We've got to get a better foothold in there because we haven't got enough.
Okay, Sharon.
Hello. I hope with the acoustics and my blocked nose you can actually understand exactly what I'm saying. But firstly, I really want to congratulate you on the Grow Your Own. I champion this. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think it's the only way we could have seen ourselves out of this problem. Going back, I used to foster complex adolescents and teenagers that were known to be runners and to go missing, and sitting on and going to committees in London that exploitation and missing children are now becoming greater. In my time, there wasn't a really good link up with the police. There was a multi-agency, but it wasn't really consistent. So it sort of like was, they've run again, just leave the note on the door and we'll come and pick it up whenever we can. This wasn't Medway Social Services, but it was Kent Police. So I just wondered if there is a more structured multi-agency if children are known to be runners or to have suffered trauma and are known to be flight.
So I'd say yes, but there's a little caveat. I think certainly our work with Kent Police, and who's our strongest partner, I think that works well. They've got a specialist team for contextual safeguarding for missing children. There's much more join up. We've got that work happens at the front door, and the police sit in our front door MASH, so we've got the police there. Kelly Cogger, our head of service at the front door, is always involved in that work and overseeing it. And there's a real sense of ownership across that. And we've got on top of that, we've got the strategic group that oversees it, and then we've got those missing and exploitation discussions are happening in the service as well, and the police are involved in those. I think my caveat would be we struggle more with children that are missing outside of Medway when we're trying to enact with other police forces. I think some police forces, particularly London, it's more challenging for us because they're not Kent's responsibility and they're our strongest partner. So I think the work there we have to work harder at and isn't always as easy. But I think we've got good buy-in from the police. I have a regular meeting with them myself. Leanne meets regularly with the police as well, so we've got it happen at all layers to try to make sure that we pick up those issues and escalations early, and we're working collaboratively as well. So I think probably improve from probably what it sounds like perhaps your experience was, I would hope.
Okay. Which is really encouraging. I mean, I think it's when a child first goes missing for the first time, everybody's there. It's when it's sort of like the 14th time, and then but they're probably children in need, just as much, because there's a reason behind it. But it's brilliant, and it's good to know that the services working together.
We don't get everything right, but it's certainly, when you look, I think there is much more join up. Those children have a lot of oversight. Leanne has a daily missing report about any children that stay missing for any length of time. I review them, Leanne reviews them. There's a lot of oversight of those children because we know they're a worry. And the ones that go missing more often, we've got procedures around. Once they've gone missing so many times, we'll have a strategy discussion. There's more of a multi-agency wrap around those young people. We do a more joined up risk assessment. The safety planning is getting better. So I think that's improving. We've still got work to do, but it definitely feels improved from what it felt like 3 years ago.
Brilliant, thank you. And it is a difficult job. I appreciate that as well. Thanks.
Okay, finally, Leah. Sorry, we're running out of time. Sorry, Damalola.
So, firstly, it was paragraph 5.3, and obviously I saw on the graph how much inadequates have tracked downwards, but that 13%... Sorry? Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. So paragraph 5.3, and I saw on the graph how much inadequates had kind of tracked downwards, and 13% is much, much better than it used to be. But I just wondered, in those ones that we are still getting, is there kind of any identifiable trends or even reasons given at all for why it's been graded inadequate? This one... And then I think you mentioned it in the report, but I didn't quite catch it, was whether, obviously, I know that the ones that come to planning won't necessarily house Medway children, but I just wanted to check that we are finding better sufficiency within the system now for when we do need to house Medway children. And the final one was about staff retention and whether you think that the new payment structure and the changes to MedPay will improve some of that staff retention. Because I think even with the other one, so pay was mentioned, and then the other reasons mentioned, actually pay can still sit under them, because if people are leaving because of pay, then it's going to increase pressure and workloads and things.
So the reason why I think even in the most outstanding systems in the country, which I've seen, you'll always have inadequate work. People will inevitably not get everything right. Although we want to think it's a perfect world, it sadly isn't. So an inadequate work can be, it doesn't necessarily have to be I think everyone really worries, but it can be someone not doing the right thing in the right way. It can be about timeliness. It can be about decision making. So there's so many layers of that. So we'll always have some inadequate work. Sometimes people make those mistakes as well. So we expect to see it. The volume now is at much lower levels and much more where we want it to be. Maybe a bit lower, I'd like to see it, obviously, but you'll never rule it out. I think when we know we're starting to see the improved trajectory, is you can start to see the good creeping up rather than the requires improvement. So requires improvement's been getting better, which is good because that's saying it's not inadequate, but you want to see the good coming up. And I think that, as I think this has been the conversation for years, it takes years to get there. To get really good, solid work consistently in audit, you've got to get everything right, because if you think an audit's got 100 bits to it, so many questions.
So just to say, it wasn't a criticism of that.
Oh,
I think that's great. It was just to say, is there an identifiable trend that we could still work on to improve?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is what we would want to see. We're seeing this slow, steady stream of inadequate down, requires improvement and good going up. So I think we won't see the sort of 80% good that we see in our target. That's going to be a couple of years, really, to get to that place, really. So it's a long journey, I think, to get to consistently good work, because there's so many, got like 30 parts of an audit that you look at. So it's quite hard to get right. And then in terms of sufficiency, it is improving. I mean, we've got more offer than we had, but we haven't got enough in Medway. That's our challenge. So we've got much more offer for homes for children, but not enough in Medway, because the market's taken up by all of the other children that are placed here in those placements that were already taken up. And that's James's job, and his team is constantly trying to drive the market, and they're doing a fantastic job, to be fair, but it's really challenging because other people have already got their foothold in there. We just have to keep pushing at it. And then finally, the staff retention. I think MedPay will probably impact less on social workers, I anticipate, because we've already done a lot of benchmarking of pay nationally. So I think when we get to the MedPay bit for the social workforce, we might find it doesn't look radically different. But I don't think we know that until we start doing the benchmarking evaluation work.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I thought that was a really good contribution from everybody, but I'd like to thank you and your team especially, because obviously you're 27% down staffing-wise, and you're still working as though our children matter, and that's really much appreciated. So, Vice Chair, or do you want to come back?
Can I say it is about the team? It's not about me. I know you've been very complimentary tonight, but actually it is about the team and the work they do, and they do some fantastic work. So it should be them that gets the credit. Well, there's no I in team, is there? Okay, Vice Chair.
I move the committee notes the improvement update report and the steps taken to drive and sustain ongoing improvements, and that maintaining a focus on improving services and embedding changes will significantly contribute to better outcomes for children and families in Medway. Children's Services, the committee notes that the Children's Services workforce update, the challenges and barriers to recruiting a permanent workforce and the steps taken to drive progress. The committee notes that improving workforce stability will significantly contribute to better outcomes for children and families in Medway.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you, Smither. And is it agreed? Thank you all. Okay, we come to our lovely cabinet member for adult social children's care. And goodness me, 10 months in the role and you've already survived 2 Ofsteds. So we've had your report. So are there any questions from the floor?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to start with Oliver, if that's okay, because he's our young person here this evening. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you, Jo. So I was very intrigued by your report. Found in section 5 when you're shown to be championing the interests of young people that you probably failed to include Medway Youth Council, because obviously you did come to our annual conference. So firstly, I just wanted to say, what did you find about our annual conference? Did you enjoy it? Feedback on that would be good. And as well, I know I've not worked closely with you, but I know some other youth councillors have. They've been very positive of you, so just want to share that as well. But firstly, from a member of Youth Parliament standpoint, which I'll be stepping down as, so how can you support the future members of Youth Parliament that represent Medway? Also, could you be able to endorse more about Medway Youth Council to more young people? That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oliver, and just to repeat, happy birthday recently as well. So excellent. Not so young a member now, but anyway, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that annual conference. I think it was the one to do with diversity safeguarding. It was held over in the college. I made some good contacts there. I found myself sitting on a table with pupils and the safeguarding lead of the Maritime Trust, and that's the school which is presently at Twiddle that a lot of motorists are going to be privately cursing because of the work on Finsbury Hill over the next 3 months. But no, they were very well behaved. They actually came forward an awful lot. They worked well in their group work on the tables, and they weren't frightened to speak up in the actual plenary sessions as well. And we were given some tough questions at the end when it was we were asked to form a sort of question time panel, and I thought how the Youth Council organised the conference was really good. It was particularly pleasing to go into the foyer with all of the market stalls there. There was a kind of rapid, people filling, especially the safeguarding lead was filling up her pockets with the contraceptives, but also there was lots of useful information. So it was thoroughly well worth doing, I think. Some interesting questions posed about gender and everything and all of that, because these are changing times now. It's sort of gone an awful long way, I think, in the right direction compared to when I was like your age, much more accepting of ethnic minorities, much more accepting of the whole gay and bisexual, etc., and all of that. That was really good, and some really good thoughtful thoughts coming through from the young people. How I can support future members, I think. One of the novelties that we're going to see in the next year is how we're going to take forward maybe having a younger person's mayor, whether that's going to be linked with primary schools or older ones. I think that's one way of doing that. But I think just generally speaking, in the school visits that I go to, I don't go to as many school visits as my colleague that you're about to hear from, Tracy Coombs. Incidentally, it's been a pleasure to work with her because she's got that experience more recently in schools than I have, but, having been a retired head teacher. But as and when we do go to those school visits, there was one that we went to recently up at Walderslade Primary School where we were introduced to some of the young people's representatives that were shadowing various subjects, and it was really interesting to hear about the work that they do. And I also try and encourage our more disadvantaged members of the community to consider themselves to actually come forward onto the Youth Council. So I'll be trying what I can through our networking, etc., to get more of a diverse selection coming forward, but that won't be easy. And also, I think the Medway Parents and Carers Forum have just been absolutely brilliant there. There was a sort of coffee morning held on Monday at Mid-Kent College that was geared towards parents who've got special needs children, looking at the 16-plus offer. And I was pleased that there was a parent there from Abbey Court who was there with her son. Yeah, so that's how I think I can support future members. I can especially support future members in my own ward, because as a ward councillor, we're involved with casework, etc. And so I'm always looking out for potential recruits that I can point in that direction. I will be using my LinkedIn a lot more than I have been doing in the last year, because I think it's very important in my role as lead member to be able to endorse the good work that is being done, and it's less for me, but it's more for the other people that I'm keen to endorse. So that's maybe a little aid memoir for the year ahead. So maybe next year you'll find that I've been doing a lot more endorsing. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Smither.
Thank you, Jo. And yes, well done on surviving 2 Ofsteds. That's quite a challenge. There's a couple of things in your report that I kind of wanted to highlight and just say it's really encouraging. One is that improved focus on involving parents and carers in the consultations with them, and open drop-in sessions, and just generally more conversations with them, and how SEND provision is put together. So that's very encouraging, and I hope that goes from strength to strength. Also, that it's very encouraging to note that we are on target to meet the reductions for the safety valve agreement.
Yeah.
That is absolutely critical. I know you already know this, but that is the safety net, that is the backup. We don't have a backup to the backup. No. So it's really, really good that kind of focus needs to continue on that. Yeah. I have a question around school transport. So as you know, at the start of this academic year, September last year, there was an issue with school transport, and it just kind of, Lisa's smiling, laughing, it kind of just fell apart a little bit. So I wanted to ask if a thorough review has happened about that. Has that been fixed permanently? Have preventative steps been taken so that we are not in a situation like that again? Okay. And also, my understanding of school transport is that each child has a transport arrangement from their home to their school. Now, can we be creative about how these arrangements work? Is there a way of streamlining that a bit so that people can share transport in some way? I'm just thinking about, in terms of cost, because I know it comes at a high cost, school transport provision, but also the impact on climate, having so many journeys. So I'm just curious if it's been explored, some kind of alternative suggestions of how that might look. And the other question I have is about the section on youth offending. Yeah. So we recently, at the last ONS, had a report and presentation from the Cookham estate, and it was just downright disturbing. It was really horrific to read, with young people being kept in isolation for most of the day, for hours and hours on end, and very little educational provision and things like that. I personally didn't find any confidence in the report, the way it was presented, and the mitigations that were offered, steps. I just didn't come away with any confidence. I came away quite disturbed. I wonder how much oversight you have with Cookham, what influence you can exert to try and change the course of things there. Thank you.
Thank you, Smither. Yes, Adam, we successfully tried to invite the governor from Cookham-Wood.
Yeah.
What we ended up with was the assistant governor, Donna Chapman, and the report was, you know, not acceptable, really. We robustly challenged that over ONS.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Smither, for the compliments that you actually started off with before moving in for the kill with the three searching questions. Really good. How to win friends and influence people. That's really good. First of all, can I just pick up on your first compliment before I answer the questions, which is the focus that I've given on taking up the opportunity to go and meet with parents and carers. I'm pleased that Lisa's here, but with Lisa and her colleagues, I've met them several times, and I've been, I found it really helpful to be able to speak to parents in that kind of relaxed type setting, with many of them coming forward, perhaps if they hadn't been able to get sufficiently heard with their issue, often to do with SEND, sometimes to do with school transport. So it has a bearing on some of your later questions. And one of the themes that's come forward is that several of the people in the Parents and Carers Forum, because they do an amazing job, have told me unsolicited that they're really enthused and surprised to have a lead member counsellor come to those events. They said that never happened before, which I would have thought it's a really dead easy thing to actually do, because how can you aspire to lead the service if you're not actually, connecting with the parents and carers? So I do thank the parents and carers for their support on that. So turning to your questions, school transport. There's the first one on that safety valve as well, just to say that I am really pleased about the progress that we're making there. So school transport is a very knotty issue. What we've got there is we've got a school transport reference group, which involves the Medway Parents and Carers Forum. Lisa sits on that. We have Paul Clark and various other officers. We've got Celia Buxton, etc. It was really important during the budget setting process that we were particularly looking at some of the changes that we might need to make there, because obviously in the early stages of the budget setting we didn't know quite how much budget we were going to have to save. But obviously it is a statutory service. So the other thing involved with that is that any changes that we do make need to be consulted properly on. So what we've been doing is we've been asking, first of all, the parents and carers to come forward with their ideas as to how we can streamline school transport a bit better, including such things as group-type pickups, maybe supermarkets, etc., rather than necessarily always from the home. And we've got a whole long list, I'd like to call it, of various changes that we could be looking at. So whether it's things like school transport for, and this has been contentious in the past, but I know that the previous administration did actually look at it, school transport for grammar school children who are tending to go further afield. Should we still be providing that, etc. So the important thing is that we need to make sure that every child has the opportunity to take advantage of the marvellous education system, because it's a very high level of good schools that we've got within Medway, and we need to make sure that they can attend. So it is work in progress. We can't make those changes overnight, but we've been looking at it, and we've got a good focus group involving Lisa. And obviously, one of their regular meetings that I go to online, it was dominated by the issue which you've referred to before, where there was a change in provider, and things did fall apart. What we're moving forward on now is that, because we've been starting to commission for next year, is that we are ourselves, when I say we, the local authority, is prescribing various routes, not just leaving it to the provider in order to come up with the routes. And we've been testing that system, particularly with this roadwork situation that's just about to start on the Finsbury Hill as well. So that's going to be a useful foreplay, if you like, for the next school year. I'm a lot more confident now than I was when obviously we heard some of the issues which arose back last September, that we shouldn't have that issue arising again. But obviously I can't like rule it out. But thank you for your question and making sure that that's getting the priority which it needs. Youth offending. One of the things which I, as lead member, particularly voiced my view on was that I do remember when I was in opposition coming to a really good Meet the Professionals event that was held actually in the St George's Centre. So I made a point of making sure that the youth offending team did put on like another event, and this was held over in Strood. And I'd like to thank all members that did come along, because I was absolutely blown away by the opportunities that previous offenders, with their engagement with the youth offending team, they've managed to make incredible achievements, whether it's in their interests involving volunteering as a carer, whether it's like to do with the music and rap thing which they're working on in that like recording studio that they've got there, and just the pride of those young people showing us those like particular stalls. They really took ownership, and we did take a photograph of all the officers and the young people who were there. Obviously didn't broadcast that as much as we could have done because of young people's not necessarily wanting to be like identified, but it was a really good occasion, and they were really pleased that those members that were able to make it came along and actually heard about it, which brings me now to Cookham Wood, which is a very sad story. It really is a sad story. Over the years of having been a member, I have availed myself of the opportunity. I haven't been able to do it in this last year, but I'll explain about that in the shortly. But I have actually been inside, if you like. I've been to Cookham Wood over the years in slightly better times than what we've been seeing now. So what I've done on that this year is I've had a Teams meeting with the external advisor who's very knowledgeable on these things, and he's basically encouraged me to give the new management a bit of time to settle in before arranging visits, etc., which I would be keen, shouldn't just be with me, but from members from the Scrutiny committee as well. We do need to give them that chance to be able to settle in. It is a national service. When I last inquired, we only had one young Medway person actually in Cookham Wood, but it is on our patch, and we do need to take responsibility for the scrutiny which they need as well. And it was a step forward actually having the Deputy Governor come. She was obviously ill-prepared because I watched it online, but I don't think she'll be so ill-prepared next year, and so we should get a better report next year. I think I've touched on everything, but let me know if I've left out something which you wanted to ask me about. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report. My questions concern Section 9 on young people with SEND.
Yep.
In your opinion, has demand for SEND supports reduced by 45%? What does a 2.6% increase in EHCP children attending mainstream schools mean for the overall provision in the system? And what do you make of the Chancellor's announcement yesterday of 105 million for 15 new free schools, which should be about 2,000 places nationwide? I understand that they're going to release information more about that in May. Has any of the information hit Medway yet, or yourself?
Election.
And can we make sure that Medway is trying to get something out of that money, if at all possible? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Robbie, and it's good to see you back as well. So, If I can start with the last one on free schools, we do have free schools, and we've got one particular free school which is in the advanced planning stages with construction starting shortly. It's going to be coming to us via the Inspire Trust, and it's going to be on Beeching's area, going out towards Twiddle, and there's going to be 100 extra places there. 50 of them will be for children with autism, and 50 will be for children with social and emotional needs. And I understand that they're going to have different entrances as well, because they're quite distinct groups there. So that's an indication, I hope, to you, Robbie, that we do take it seriously. We know that the only way of getting new schools these days is through free schools, but I'm really pleased that we're working in partnership with the Inspire Academy towards delivering one of those. Obviously, you've seen what's come out of the budget, and I'll be raising any further opportunities that might exist for Medway with officers from the budget, like yesterday. Young people with SEND, and one of the points there that you raised was the small but nonetheless significant increase in the number of SEND pupils going to mainstream. I really welcome the fact that more children with SEND are going to mainstream, because special needs is a very wide area, and quite a few of them, I think, will benefit from going to mainstream schools, already do benefit from going to mainstream schools, but it's good that more and more of them are actually taking up that opportunity. But when they're there, they need that wraparound support. So the coffee morning that I mentioned earlier on Monday, which was at Mid-Kent College, that was looking at the post-16 provision, and there were parents there who were receiving assurances from Mid-Kent as a provider around that kind of wraparound care, which even in a huge place compared to schools setting like Mid-Kent College, they are able to, and that they are planning to actually deliver. So they've actually transferred a number of staff that used to work at Rivermead, because Rivermead used to provide some of that post-16 offer for our SEND, and increasingly Mid-Kent College are going to be doing that in the future. Yes, young people with SEND, it does feature in my workload. As the lead member, if any of you as ward councillors have a particularly knotty problem involving parents with children who've got special needs that haven't been able to, through their direct contact with officers, get some redress or get some answers to their questions, they're welcome to approach me, and I see that as part of my role as lead member, to be kind of like a special, to develop more of a specialist confidence and know-how in terms of how to be able to try and get a fair hearing for some of the stories which I've heard. Smitha mentioned earlier on about the safety valve and the work that's going on there, which is helping to reduce the waiting times for education and healthcare plans, but also helping to reduce the number of children needing to go for EHCPs, because it is we know that there are shortages of the kind of specialists professionals, particularly like psychologists, etc., for as part of that health and education plan. But basically, under my leadership, we'll be seeing more children with SEND going to mainstream school, if I've got anything to do with it, because I think that is the better place for them. And it's also the better place for our budget, frankly, because some of the expense and the open-ended demand is when we're not able to offer local provision for some of our children that have got clear special needs. So a step in that right direction is reopening Eden House, so that we've got some of our own, if you like, in-house provision that we can offer. And I'm very confident that this will be beacon for some of the unregistered night provision that we have to have through our like economy at the moment. So they do a useful job, but I think that if we can, like my colleague, Councillor Shaba Khan, with her agency for letting agency and driving up standards that way, I think we should be driving up standards for our children living in group homes as well. But thank you for your question, Robbie.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say how I think I'm very thankful for your answers. You're clearly very well read up on your brief and on top of the detail, and I really appreciate that. I would just politely suggest, with regards to the reduction in EHCPs, whilst I appreciate they're essential for the safety valve and the funding that gives, and I've sat down with the council last year and received assurances that kids aren't necessarily going to be missed by the sort of changes they've made to reduce that number down. 45% reduction in a short space of time. We have to be careful that whilst the cultural change in schools is taking place where the teachers start to believe that they don't need to push these kids onto EHCPs in order to access the care and support, that in that transition period we go on in that journey, that kids don't fall through the gaps. But I don't really feel like I need to say that to you because you clearly are on top of everything, and I'm very assured by your answers, so thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'll just add on to that last point there. I know that part of that is due to the extra funding the schools are already receiving now to be able to themselves deal with it without necessarily having to have a plan to be able to do that. But thank you, Robbie.
Okay, thank you. It's Paula, then Damalola, please.
So, welcome, Adam.
Hi, Paula.
So I think Robbie stole my question about EHCPs, so I'll not ask you that one. Well, I think it was a very comprehensive answer. Just wanted to dwell on the results of the SEND inspection, which is imminent. And are you convinced we can continue to continuously improve, is my question. And what challenges might we be confronted to continuously improving? Smither stole my question about Cook and Wood, so thank you for that.
Paula, can I just give you a little embargo? We're not sure of the outcome of the SEN inspection till March.
No, I said it was imminent. I didn't say that we had the results. I said it was imminent.
So we can't really talk about it because of the big brother of Ofsted, or sister of Ofsted. No worries, thank you.
Okay. So in terms of continuously improving.
Continuously improving some of the
okay,
things. Yes.
And then the other question, obviously we've had quite a lot of questions around workforce and recruitment and retention concerns. And it remains very challenging. Are you convinced we're doing enough to ensure that we are recruiting and retaining our staff?
Yeah, okay, thank you. And thank you, Chair, because I'd already started to answer that question along the lines that you did, but you did it so much more like authoritatively from your position than I could have done as the recipient here. But thank you for that. Yes, in terms of like continuously improving SEND, which improve we must, because I've heard some really good stories about the support that our SEND children and families have heard, but I've also heard some horrors as well. So in order to continuously improve, we'll be working increasingly with our partners. So that involves the NHS, it involves other agencies such as police, it involves other agencies within the council as well, because SEND services straddles housing. It also obviously clearly straddles children's social care, and it straddles education for my esteemed colleague Tracy Coombs as well. So, yeah, I think partnership working is going to be the way forward. I know part of my regular oversight board, which I chair, whereby I have the officers there looking at the budget, looking at our performance. Tracy Coombs comes along to that meeting with me and sometimes takes over the chair if I'm not able to, such as if I had a bad Wi-Fi connection and things like that. So we do work as a team, don't we? But one of the things that I've noted from the last oversight meeting was that we, as social care staff within our service, can do better in terms of getting that health information for our looked after children. So this straddles the corporate parenting as well. It is relatively easy to do, but it just needs to be a priority that needs to be at the forefront of people working there. Yes, I won't say too much more because I don't want to compromise anything in terms of the embargo, but I think you've got a flavour there. Thank you.
Thank you. We're 7 minutes behind, and I'm really sorry about that. So what I'm going to ask is there's obviously Damilola, Marion and Leah, then Mark. Could you be really brief with your questions and to the point? Thank you.
And I'll try and be brief with my answers as well, Chair. Thank you.
I wasn't going to say that to a cabinet member, sir.
No, I have been known to ramble sometimes.
Okay, hi Adam, sorry, I only have 2 questions. So
Hiya.
the first one was, why are we cutting down on education health plans? Is this linked to the banded funding matrix, and how is this being monitored? And the second question, which I'm not sure if you've answered already, was what are we doing to look at reducing the cost of school transport for SEND children?
Yeah. Thank you. Like Damilola. I think I just turned, oh yes, no, it's back on again now. In terms of cutting EHCPs, that's part of the national movement, but we're doing it locally as well, which is we're getting more resources for our children with special needs into the mainstream schools and into special needs schools, so that they've got more of a budget to be able to, because they know their children better than we do, even in the local authority, due to the academisation programme. That's why there are, so it's the really needy ones that still need to have the EHCP, and the clue is in the title, education and health. So often they are the ones that have got particular healthcare needs, which then pose a barrier towards them receiving the education which they do deserve to have, just like anybody else. So also, it is an angst-ridden process if you're in the process waiting for if you qualify these days for an EHCP, because it still takes quite a while, although that's part of our safety valve targets, is to decrease that period of time. And I was just nodding towards Celia there, and she was giving me an encouraging smile that we seem to be on target for actually doing that as well, which I'm pleased about. Then the other question that you asked for, it was cutting EHCPs, and then I can't read my scribble. Can you just repeat your second question again?
Sorry, I also referred to school transport.
Oh, school transport,
yes,
yes,
but there was
right.
a part that you missed on the first question.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was the banded funding matrix. Is that to replace
Yeah.
the children who don't necessarily need an EHCP and they're
Yes,
getting support?
that's
within
right, indeed.
My question was, how is that being monitored, like in terms of the children who are receiving their support via the school?
Yeah.
How are you monitoring that they're getting that support? Because I imagine that's being allocated at the start of the year, like a certain amount.
Yeah. That's a good question, which I will take away with me and come back to you on, Damola, because I can't necessarily give you an immediate answer, but it's a really good question. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Adam. Right, Leah, Marion.
So I was in the middle of typing Damola's question as she asked it, so that's that one. But I think Labour colleagues will be aware that that is a big problem within schools, is just if you're not going to go down the ECHP route, then I don't see where the oversight on schools to make sure that they're delivering really is. So I think it's worth flagging.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's point well made.
And then I know, obviously, you've been meeting lots of foster carers recently and been undertaking those safeguarding visits. Just wondered what that looked like and how we're ensuring that children that we place with carers are safe and looked after. Yeah. And then my other one, when I find the page, is what's happening. So the hub model, and then there's satellite models attached to it. And I just wondered what's actually happening in those satellite models, because the promise that came out of the Sure Start campaign was that they would save as many of the centres as they could, but there's not much point if there isn't much happening at those centres. So I just wondered if you could tell me what's going on there.
Okay.
And then that was as succinct as I could be. So
Thank you. I'll try and be succinct as well, Leah. I think this is one of the things that Medway does really well, is this programme of safeguarding visits. So just to give you a flavour of some of the things which I've learnt there, I've been to one visit which involved a young baby who was basically born into foster care and had been with her foster parents for a year. She was approaching her first birthday. And the really good example of work that I saw there was the foster dad, or rather foster granddad, because he was more closer to my age than he was closer to the age of her original father, probably. Although fathers can be older, but one of the things that he had done during that, and that child was clearly loved by her siblings in that household, was the photographs that he had produced as an album, so that when that young girl grows up, she's got her development over the first year lovingly, captured, etc. Because unfortunately, some foster carers need, foster children need to go to more than one placement. But if they've got something to be able to look back at, then that's really good. So that gives you just the succinct insight into the safeguarding visits. Oversight of schools, if not getting EHCPs, was your other point. And yes, I think I've already said to Damola, because she sort of raised the same question, that I'm going to come back to you and to Damola on that. So thank you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, and then there's the hub and satellites. So in my first month or so, I made sure that I visited each of the hubs that we've got, and I'm going to challenge myself just to reel them off. So we've got Gillingham at Woodlands, we've got Strood near Elaine, we've got All Saints, Chatham, and we have the interesting juxtaposition of Wayfield stroke Rainham. So Rainham hasn't got their own one, but they have to go over to Wayfield. But those are opening up a lot more, and there will be more multidisciplinary teams based from out there as well. So that's going to improve the access to parents who need that input. And it's my firm ambition to not only to revisit all those hubs, but to get around all the satellites as well, because I do recall some of them that used to be Sure Start centres, and I'd really like to see us moving back towards that. And then finally, just on that, I went to a really good Welcome to Medway exhibition that was held just over the road from the All Saints hub, and it was absolutely bustling, and it's going to be the first of many which are going to be moving around. I believe the next one's going to be in Strood, so any of you Strood councillors in particular, make sure you get along there. It's really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Marion.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, Adam. Thank you for your report. It was very detailed, and I think I learned a lot from it. I wanted to ask about the strategy for early life.
Yeah.
Children in care, they have less opportunities than other children. I think it's very important to grab them as early as we can and help them have these opportunities. So can you tell me more about the program? Is it effective, and is there any outcomes observed so far? That's my first question. And my second question is on point 8 of the report, suspension. The text highlights that Medway has higher suspension rate than the rest of the country. My questions are, what is the difference between Medway's suspension rate and the national average rate? What specific steps have been taken to fix the problem? And are we collecting information from not only the schools, but from the parents and the children, so we can have more understanding how to fix it? Thank you.
Okay. if I start with the higher than average suspension rate that we have in Medway, I think it's also higher than the national rate, but I will check on that and sort of follow up on that if I can with the actual figures for you. Because so many of our particularly secondary schools, or virtually all of them are like academies, so I take a leaf out of the book of my colleague Tracy on these schools issues, which is to refer any parents that come to me about their child having been suspended to the increasingly multi-academy trust website that school comes under, because there is that provision there for being able to have managed moves, ideally within the same academy trust, etc., in order to be able to reduce the length of those suspensions. So the reasons for them being suspended is often unruly behaviour, but there's quite a high percentage of those who are children with special needs, which to my mind, means that the inclusion agenda isn't as far advanced as what I'd like to be seeing, and it's something I'm going to work with my colleague Tracy Coombs on. So I'm going to stick to that as a short answer, because it was a short question. Thank you. And the actual strategy to do with... Oh, yes, it's the early years strategy. I will defer to my colleague Tracy Coombs, because she looks after the early years for me. But just all I would say from the social care point of view, one of the things I was really pleased that we didn't have to cut when we were approaching the budget is the early approach that we have through social care, which is to make sure that we start tackling problems before they get too advanced in terms of social care, because it saves us more money and it's better for the children and families. But if I can bow to my colleague Tracy Coombs, she'll give you chapter and verse on, because she's very passionate about it.
That's right. Thanks, Adam. Mark, lastly.
Yeah, Joe, in view of your plea about the time, I think I'm going to adapt my question, which was on mental health services, to ask Tracy Coombs that question. Can I make 3 points, 20 seconds each? First of all, delighted what Adam said about 6-7, the youth offending team, and I thought he was hiding his light, but he has actually been and visited them, as he said in response to Smither's question. Equally pleased that the support to children in care and care leavers teams are listening to young people's views. I think that's so important. And I was pleased to see that in Adam's report as well, that you know, we're listening to young offenders, we're listening to children in care. It's important to understand the issues involved. And finally, Chair, the third point was that I'm sorry that I was so overwhelmed by Adam's answers that I nearly knocked my teacup over in the middle while he was speaking. Hope it didn't put him off his track. But I'll defer my question. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam, for your answers and everybody's contributions. And I'll go over to the Vice Chair.
I move that we note the report.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, everybody. Is that agreed? Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Our next part is to welcome our portfolio holder for education, and I'm so excited that a former head teacher is in this role. And Tracy, I just want to thank you for the contribution you made at full council in a plea to keep the Household Support Fund, because I think that affects children mainly in vulnerable households, and I think he half listened. It's been extended in the budget for 6 months, but I think it needs to be remaining, you know, indefinitely to support that safety net for children and vulnerable families. So portfolio holder for Cabinet for education. Any questions, please? I'm going to limit you to 2 contributions each. Some of you got a bit carried away with 3 or 4. I'm reining you in for 2. We've got a time limit. Thank you for your comprehensive report, Tracy. I'm going to start with Paula, Marion, Damalola and Leela. Leah, sorry.
So I will have one question. Welcome, Tracy. My question is, to what extent do you think the increasing prevalence of child poverty is impacting attendance and attainment across Medway?
Thank you for that. I think one of the things, if you've read my report, that I would really remark on is the disparity in outcomes for children depending on the deprivation that they come from. So if I choose an example, or end of key stage 2 results, you'll see that children in Medway who are eligible for free school meals, 41% reach the required standard in reading and writing and maths, while 61% of those children not eligible for free school meals attain that standard. Now, we know that in Medway we have got fantastic primary schools. I think it's 95 or 96% of them judged to be good or outstanding by Ofsted. Children who are entitled to free school meals attend the same schools as those who are not. So it's not the quality of teaching that's different. They're going to the same good schools and outstanding schools. They're getting the same good quality teaching. So there's something else afoot here, and we need to look much, much wider. We know that there's a strong link between deprivation and outcomes for children. And in order to narrow this attainment gap between those who are from the most deprived or the least deprived communities, we need to look much further than just the education in our schools. We need to be looking at health, we need to be looking at housing, we need to be looking at access to technology, we need to be looking at the parents being able to support their children with their learning. So I absolutely think there's a clear-cut link between poverty and outcomes for children in education, and I'm sure in many other areas besides education. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I go to Oliver, because he's our young person here next?
Thank you, Chair. So my 2 questions, similar to the ones I asked Adam. So firstly, how would you be able to endorse Medway Youth Council more to young people? And additionally, what more can you do for Medway Youth Council in your role? Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. I have to say that I've really enjoyed working with you on projects since I was elected in May. I think we've had a similar length of time in post, in fact, so I've really enjoyed doing that. And I think that there's such a role for Medway Youth Council. It's really important that we listen to children's voice. It can be easy for us to think that we know what's best, but actually we need to listen to young people and hear what they feel are the important matters to be discussed. And I think that Medway Youth Council are a really good path into this. A week ago today, we had our full council meeting, but that afternoon, I welcomed over 50 children and young people from Brompton Academy and other schools linked to the Westbrook Trust who came to this chamber and actually took part in presenting their own motions, having their own debates, experiencing using our technology, and really finding out more about democracy. And we need to start with young people, because these are the people who will be sitting in my place in years to come, and the sooner that they can be involved in having their voice heard and understanding the difference that they can make in our communities, the better. I'd really look forward to carrying on working with Medway Youth Council. As Councillor Price said earlier, we're looking at having a children's mayor, we're looking at doing more events with them. So I know your term's coming to an end. I look forward to working with your successor in times to come, and just hearing about their ideas about what they feel that they can contribute to democracy in Medway and to having their say in the way forward for our community.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to be success. Two new people will be elected into my role as a member of UK Youth Parliament, which is really good. Some all amazing, fantastic candidates. So I'm sure they'll be looking forward to working with you as well.
Yeah, we've all been invited to the elections, so I hope to see many of us there. And I would like to say you gave me my golden moment of the year at the synagogue, where you were invited up for a certificate, and you were so humble. You took your other chap with you, and that's what Medway is about. It is about friendship, companionship, and not just be, hogging the limelight yourself, but embracing others. So thank you for that magic nugget of the year for me. Smither.
Excuse me. I can't hear. Can you hear me now? Yes. On page 52, it says about complaints about school received from Ofsted. That's quite an alarming increase there. So, 25% increase in 12 months and 50% in the previous year. So, what are these complaints? What's the nature of these complaints that Ofsted is passing down to schools? Are SEND children, for example, involved in that? I just want to understand what the scale of this is. And the other question I had was about the actual school estates in Medway, the buildings and facilities. There was a recent survey of school teachers and leaders, and the results were pretty alarming. About 80% of them saying that they don't think their facilities and buildings are fit for purpose. Many of them saying they don't have proper air conditioning or heating facilities. They don't have facilities for STEM subjects or even SEND provision in PE departments. It's pretty horrific, and I think one of the teaching union heads says it's basically we're looking at catastrophic underinvestment in the school estate, and everything is creaking and falling apart. So what is the Medway context for that? Are you aware of any seriously risky situations like that with the buildings and facilities in Medway schools? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Starting with the first issue that you brought up, the complaints to Ofsted, these are complaints from parents, and they cover a range of issues. So they might be bullying issues, it might be to do with policies, there are a whole range of issues. Ofsted can't deal with these individual complaints, so particularly if there are safeguarding concerns, then they would come to Medway to talk to schools, to look into that and to investigate it. Not all complaints are upheld. There are some complaints that that come about because of clashes between parents and schools. There are some that are quite simply resolved. But there are a whole range of different issues that parents can use that mechanism to get in touch with Ofsted if they feel that they've not been able to address it via the school. The local authority will particularly if there are safeguarding concerns, the local authority will send a team in and make sure and look at the different policies and procedures that are in place to make sure that children are safe. That's our prime concern if there are any concerns that come in regarding child protection and safeguarding. On your other point about the schools that we have on our estate, we have, remember, 80% of schools in Medway are academies. Those schools, the upkeep, the maintenance of the buildings are up to the Department for Education. They fund it. So we are responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of the buildings, which are local authority schools. And we have a condition grant to do this. Academies can apply for additional funding to repair and restore their schools. The local authority schools, we have our limited funds to be able to do this. And these funds have been cut over the years. We have much less money available to maintain and upkeep our schools. And so, we have to prioritise often to make sure that we are spending our money most effectively. We're not actually aware of any serious issues in any of our local authority schools at the moment. So it's trying to have a rolling programme of maintenance before things get to a state where we're needing to spend a lot of money to do major repairs.
Thank you. Next, we have Leah, please.
Hi, Tracy, and thank you for the report. So I did notice that Medway's figures for home education are higher than national, and they have been since even before the pandemic, which I suspect is quite mostly down to the fact that we've got quite a well-organised and supportive homemade community here. But I wonder what the support that we offer from the council and from the hubs actually looks like at the point of use. And then the other question I had was quite similar to Paula's, but with a slightly different angle of just what do you think, if anything, we could be doing as a council to help close that attainment gap for children in poverty? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So for elective home education, parents have an absolute right to educate their children at home. They have absolute right to do that. As of January 2024, we had 870 pupils being home educated. To put that in context, we have approximately 50,000 pupils on roll in Medway School. So although it is higher than the national average, it's still a very, very small proportion of our children in Medway. So as I say, parents have an absolute right to home educate their children, but we want to make sure that they're doing this for the right reason. And for many children, they have a philosophical reason for doing this. However, before a child is taken off roll, our team makes sure that all other avenues have been explored and that this is the right choice for that school. And that will include offering a mediation service with the school if that's an appropriate thing to do. Most parents don't actually give a reason for home educating their children, but those who do, the most common reason given for secondary schools is social, emotional and mental health issues. And so this has risen since the pandemic, and it's still something that's quite difficult to address in some ways. We're working to strengthen our culture of inclusion across Medway, though, so that schools are more able to offer support to children and to keep them in school. So in terms of the offer that we give to parents, if a parent chooses to home educate their child, we have a home education advisor who contacts them and arranges a visit with them. They discuss the education that's being provided to the child. They can offer support and guidance to the family about how they can go about it in terms of resources and curriculum. Following the restructure of our education and our SEND service, we now have officers who operate in hubs so that families and parents can go and have that face-to-face contact with our officers to get direct advice on how best they can go about home educating their children. And they can address issues if they haven't quite decided to home educate. They can often address issues before it gets to that point where they're removing their child from school, and they can make an informed decision about whether that's the right thing for their child. As regards closing the attainment gap, pupils who are entitled to free school meals and certain other pupils have been getting additional funding in school for many, many, many years. A pupil premium has been in place to support these children and help schools to make this extra provision. However, we are not seeing that gap narrow. And I think it's really time we look beyond what's happening in schools now. That, as I was saying earlier, we're looking at the wider picture in society to support families, to help children be able to concentrate on their learning, to not be worrying about things that are going on outside of school. And that's a much, much bigger societal change that we need. We have in our primary schools, as I say, I think it's 95 or 96% judged good or outstanding. Our schools overall in Medway, it's 92% good or outstanding. So our quality of education in our schools is supporting children with their learning, but sometimes there are other things external to what's going on in the schools that need to change in order for that to happen. Funding makes a difference too in schools. We've seen cuts in SEND funding. There's more and more children who need support in schools with things like their mental health needs. And this is something that is underfunded, and it would make a difference.
Thank you. Marion next.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, Tracy. Nice to see you. So I have two questions. I actually had one, but one is rolling over from Adam. If you can tell me more about the early strategy and how successful it is and how effective it is. Yeah. And the second question is about homeschooling or home education. I understand it's necessary sometimes, You answer half of my question, which was what measures are there to ensure that the quality of the education at home is the same as at school. But my second question is about children's mental health and isolation, because most children going to school, it's not just to learn, it's their social network, they are meeting their friends every day, they're out there, and for me it seems like if a child is homeschooled for a very long period of time and he doesn't have that social network, they will be isolated and it might affect their mental health. So do we have something to mitigate that, some process? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions there. So in terms of our early years strategy, we have a family information service which helps support families to find the right early years provision or childcare for their young children. And they can offer advice on all sorts of things, in childcare choices, parenting support, welfare assistance. It's a free and confidential service that we offer to all families. We have an earlier sufficiency strategy, so that's making sure that we have enough places for children aged 2, 3 and 4-year-olds in a variety of different settings. And families will choose different things. Some would prefer a childminder, others prefer to send their children to a school-based nursery class or to independent or private provision. And we regularly review the number of places that we have to make sure that we have sufficient places for all our young children in Medway. Of course, there are changes coming to who will be entitled to free childcare places. That's coming in September. So this is a piece of work that's being undertaken at the moment to make sure that we continue to be able to offer enough places there. We are also very keen to be trying to secure funding for our early years places. There is a real debate at the moment that the funding that's provided by the government for the free school place, for the free early years places, is not really sufficient to cover the overheads of our nursery providers. So this is something that we're really fighting for. As regards the elective home education, as I said earlier, this is absolutely a parent's choice to educate their child at home. And when they do that, they are then responsible for all aspects of their child's education, their child's socialisation, and all those things around that. So it's absolutely up to a parent to find that social aspect for their children. Now, in Medway, we do lots of things. So child-friendly Medway, organise lots of events. We have things going on in libraries. We have many events that parents can join in with, but that is for the parent to decide to do that. That is something that they've chosen to home educate their child. They don't want the local authority involvement in that, so it's their choice whether or not they join in with these opportunities that we have out there for them.
Thank you. George, please.
Thank you, Joe, and it's good to see you, Councillor Coombs. Thanks for coming along. A couple of things from me. I'll be very specific and very quick. Just on school places, obviously we've got a bit of a challenge in Gillingham, in particular around primary places. I'm just interested to know sort of what the progress is. I don't know if Officers Money's coming as well. Just the progress in terms of that. If that's potentially seen as a problem moving forward, or sort of your view on that as a portfolio holder. Which sort of links into my next question, which is just more generally how you're finding engagement with the Regions Group, Department for Education, and sort of what engagement you've had with the department since your appointment, and how you're finding that relationship. And then finally, I think you've got, well, at least part of higher education sitting within your brief, so I'd just be interested to know about your engagement with some of our higher education providers within the conurbation, particularly at the moment. Obviously, we've got the challenge just up the road from here, actually, at the University of Kent, with the reduction potentially in the journalism school and the loss of 40 jobs. I'd just be interested to know if you've had any engagement around that, or any conversations with other colleagues within the council and other partners externally about how to best manage that, and your priorities in terms of higher education within Medway moving forward. So my questions. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, George. So talking about the school places, particularly primary school places, there is a real challenge in pockets across Medway, and Gillingham is one of them. Our school colleagues have been really supportive of this. So a number of schools are taking bulge classes so that we're able to accommodate it. But it is a problem that is not going to go away. We've got quite a bit of inward migration. There's been a big recruitment drive for Medway Hospital, which is great for Medway residents that we're getting more staff into the hospital, but that does mean that we've had an unexpected increase in the number of children and young people moving into the area. Some children have not been able to find a place in Gillingham, and so we get them into the nearest school which has got a place. But we are working with our colleagues in schools to be looking at that provision moving forward and to be getting extra bulge classes. So, for example, we've got one primary school in my own ward which is going to be taking a bulge class from September. Year 4 in particular has been difficult, so we are managing that, and Paul Clark is doing an excellent job of managing that quickly changing and difficult situation. In regards with engagement with the DFE and the regional directors, we do have regular meetings with them. So myself and officers regularly have Teams meetings with them. We also have had DFE involvement, of course, with our inspections, and moving forward with that, we've been working very closely with them in terms of not my own portfolio, but the ILACS inspection. We had DFE officers who were working very closely with us. So we have regular meetings with them. However, they are quite separate from the local authority, and the amount of influence that we have over how they move forward and what they're doing in academy schools is limited. Moving on to higher education, yes, that does fall within my portfolio, and we are aware of the proposals that are going on for the University of Kent just up the road here. Myself and other cabinet members have met with senior staff at the University of Kent to talk about these proposals. It's not really something that I could go into in detail, the outcomes of those discussions, but yes, we are certainly in conversation with the University of Kent. Thank you.
Thank you. Damalola next.
Hi, Tracy. So my question was, what more can we do to further improve attendance, which you might have answered before? Is study bugs having any impact on this, since parents can report on the app as opposed to speaking to the school directly? And my last question was, why are our children in early years achieving lower results in phonics in comparison to national levels, and what are we doing to improve this?
Thank you. Children missing out on lessons leaves them really vulnerable to falling behind in their learning. So it's really important that we work hard to improve attendance for our children in Medway. Things certainly dropped off after the pandemic, but they're moving in the right direction. And our target is that we are going to be back to pre-pandemic levels of attendance. We work closely with parents. Well, schools have that responsibility to work with parents to make sure that their children attend school. And our role is to work with schools to promote that. We need to make sure too that all children have access to full-time education, so that we're not having children who are on part-time timetables. If that is a strategy, then it's time limited to get children back into full-time education as quickly as possible. The attendance advisory service to schools and academies is a traded service which works on behalf of Medway. They support schools and academies in raising school attendance, and we also have a dedicated DFE attendance advisor who's been working with us on a revised action plan so that we can continue this upward trend of improving our attendance figures. We have a focus on sharing good practice across the region, and to that end, we are part of a Kent Joint Attendance Alliance, where we are working with other people so that we can disseminate good practice. Our persistent attendance has significantly reduced, and that's really pleasing because these are pupils who have got a very low attendance record, and we have an outreach team who are working with children who are missing school, and we have a 4-week turnaround to try and reintegrate these children back into school again. So it's certainly something that is a big focus for us because we realise the importance of good school attendance on learning. Regarding our early years phonics results, we are finding that children coming into reception classes are starting school with much lower speech and communication skills than was previously the case. This is something that is part of a strategy that we're working on for literacy overall. It's something which I feel really strongly about. So we're taking a really wide approach to this. We are looking at early years and how we can improve speech and communication skills of children starting school, working all through school in terms of the language and literacy provision, right through to adult education, so that parents who maybe don't have strong literacy skills are being helped to improve their own reading and writing so that they can support their children by being able to read stories with them, help them with homework and so on. So it's quite a wide-ranging approach that we're taking. It's still in the early stages, but it's going to be a big focus for improvement for education for our children.
Okay, thank you. Cosy, then Mark.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you for your very full answers, Tracy, if I may say so, particularly to that last question. I thought that was very important about literacy standards. I actually wanted to ask a little bit about adolescents and adolescent mental health services, and in terms of relating it to your portfolio, one issue which has come to my attention recently is the transition between primary and secondary school and the effect that that might have and does have on children's mental health as they step up to a completely new school. And of course there may well be a link between that and related to adolescence and children going into sort of adolescent life-changing. So what I really wanted to ask was, have you had any thoughts? I think there was a recent media article I saw on this subject, which I'm very happy to forward to you, but have you had any thoughts on the impact of children going between primary school and secondary school and the impact that might have on mental health, particularly as children seem to be presenting to CAMHS and the NHS generally at a younger and younger age with some of these issues?
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Mental health has become a bigger concern since the pandemic, and our partners in health are really stretched to be able to meet this increasing demand. This means that more of it is falling onto schools, and they have had to be diverting resources to make sure that children are supported in schools. So this might mean in terms of offering more pastoral support in schools, family liaison officers, special educational needs coordinators having to take more specialised training, spend more of their time supporting young people and children with mental health. The transition from primary to secondary school is a really big step for children. They might be in a very small one-form entry primary school where they've been with the same teacher for a long time and everyone knows them, and then they're moving to a much, much bigger provision, and it can be really daunting for children. Now, transition events are actually planned by schools, and speaking not just from my portfolio, but from my own experience as a primary school head teacher, I've been very involved in that transition and preparing schools for that move onwards. Secondary schools are pretty good at making sure that children know what they're coming into. So they plan visits, they plan taster days with the children. Very often they will go and meet the feeder primary schools to talk to the teachers to find out more about the children who are coming to them, and particularly if there are any who will need particular extra support during that transition. For children who might have SEND, often they set up additional visits and put special measures in place to make sure that they are meeting the teachers that they will have when they get there, so that they're prepared, so they're not going through that long summer holiday period becoming anxious about what they're moving into and what they might be facing. Of course, children will still have concerns. It's still a big change for them. But we have emotional wellbeing teams within, for example, school nursing, who will make sure that there's a consistent offer across schools, that there are no primary schools who are missing out on this support that they get from the teacher. We also have some mental health support teams who are embedded in schools and can support around anxiety that particular pupils may have. So we are absolutely aware that this is a difficult time for children and for parents too, who are often quite anxious for their children moving on. And we're putting as much as we can in to support schools in their own transition arrangements.
Thank you, Jo.
Thank you. And sorry about the acoustics. Quasi, last but not least.
Thank you, Jo, and thank you, Tracy, for such a comprehensive report. My question relates to 3.4 on page, I think, 55. It relates to working with businesses to come up with support for apprenticeship and placement for T levels. Now, what I'm trying to ask to find out whether you did think about how you can get people with special educational needs and into apprenticeship and to the T levels. Because from government statistics, we have about only 32% of people with autistic get an opportunity to enter into apprenticeship. So in your work, when working with businesses, did you try to find out how they can support people with special educational needs, especially those with autism, in terms of when it comes to apprenticeship and T levels? And then the second one is on what measures have you put in place to encourage people with higher education to stay in Medway after they finish their education and not leaving Medway? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. We have very recently carried out a post-16 review to look at what options are open to children when they, very often would go into the sixth form of the school that they're in. And we felt it was really important that children know the whole offer out there. We were finding that in some cases, children really just felt that they were going to stay at their own school and enter the sixth form without really knowing the whole range of things. So the post-16 working party are looking at an action plan and making sure that children are aware of this. So that might be knowing that the T levels are available. It's quite a new qualification. A lot of young people don't really understand what's involved in this. And so making sure that they're aware that that's equivalent to 3 A levels and that it gives them experience of working in industry or in business too. Looking at apprenticeships that can be there, looking at vocational qualifications and the much, much wider offer. So we need to make sure that all careers advisors in school or out are relating the whole offer to young people. We have recently developed with Mid-Kent College an expanded offer for post-16 for children with special educational needs and disabilities. And there is now a much more comprehensive range of provision for these young people. This includes going into apprenticeships, it includes going into do vocational courses. There's also a provision for children with SEND where they stay on roll at their school, so they're still in full-time education, but actually they are doing supported internships out in the community so that they're getting work experience in different sectors. It's something that's really important that young people realise that there are more routes rather than just going on to necessarily college or university, that there's a much wider offer there, and often that's a more appropriate thing for young people to be doing. In terms of encouraging young people to stay in Medway after they finish their qualifications. Absolutely, we want there to be opportunities for them here in Medway. That area is a little bit outside my portfolio, which kind of ends after education, but of course my cabinet colleagues are working to develop the opportunities for young people through working with small businesses, through bringing inward investment into the Medway area. And we, for example, in the council have just had our MedPay review to make this a more attractive offer. We're looking at having trainee social work posts here and giving them career progression within the council. And we would hope that that would expand across Medway into other businesses and companies. But absolutely, we want our homegrown talent to realise that Medway is a great place to live and to work.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tracy, and thank you for your concise report and your efforts this evening. And I was so delighted to read that there are more children who have free school meals and SEND needs at grammar schools, so inclusion's happening there as well. Have a nice rest of evening. Bye-bye. Okay. We're on to health now, and we're going to do a bit of catch-up. Oh, sorry. The worst, I always forget this. Vice Chair.
I move that we move the report. Note the report, sorry.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Paula. Agreed? Thank you, everybody. My nice bit of the evening, as well as followed by 2 Labour Cabinet members. It's the Children and Young People's Mental Health Future Contracts. And I have to say, wow, wow, wow. 8th of February, the Children's Mental Health, My Health Matters Day, wicked. And also public health event on the 22nd of May. Me and Zoe Van Dyke, another cabinet member, were there. And then online Healthy Weight Summit. Wow, have I learnt so much. Thank you, Health. Over to you.
Hello everyone, thank you for having me here today. My name is Sue Mullin. I'm an Associate Director for Children's Mental Health for NHS Kent and Medway. I'm here with my colleagues who I'm assuming you know, Hannah and Ailish, so the health representation is all 3 of us, 2 with very specific knowledge around Medway. I'm here to assume that the report's been read and just ready for questions.
That would be great. Right, questions. I'll start with Smitha, Robbie.
Hi, Sue. Thanks for this report and also the presentation that you gave the other night for member briefing. That was really informative. I kind of wanted to just say that your list of aspirations for what you want the procurement to look like, it's a very good list. It's very positive and encouraging to see the vision that you have. Especially joined up systems and information sharing. And I just kind of wanted to say that it's so important that, first of all, it isn't patchy, that when young people first get in touch with their schools or their GPs, that everybody knows where to go from there and everyone gets the same level of service. Because at the moment what happens is when you go to the GPs, some GPs will know some stuff, other GPs don't know that stuff. Some schools are very quick off the mark. They'll kind of do stuff like ELSA program, I remember that. Schools do that, but others just don't. So it's very hit and miss. So we need to have more consistency and you kind of need to ensure that's built into the procurement contracts. And also young people shouldn't have to repeat their stories every time. It's very re-traumatizing. I feel really strongly about this. It's horrible to make people do that, to kind of keep going through stuff again and again. So yes, please could you make sure that that's hard-baked into your procurement contracts, these kind of things, aspirations. Where it says that your providers there'll be a panel evaluating them, and you've said that children and young people will be on the panel. Excellent idea again, really good. Can I ask that parents and carers are also included at that stage because they have incredibly valuable experience and they're the ones who are going to be helping the young people navigate the care system, so that would be really helpful. Now, the unkind part. These statistics about young people and the length of time that they wait before they're seen and assessed, I'm sorry to say, I just don't believe it. that is not borne out by my experience in Medway, not borne out by what I'm hearing from other people, what constituents are telling me, what friends and family are telling me, that people are being seen in under 18 weeks, 6 weeks in some cases. I just don't find that credible. I don't know how it's measured. I don't know what is going missing somewhere, but I have grave concerns about that. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. That's incredibly helpful. And yes, our ambition really is to reduce that patchiness, as you describe, and that variability in experience and information. And that's a real key driver. So I love the term hard-baked. You used it last time in when we had the workshop, and it absolutely is something we're trying to build into all of the contracts. There is a challenge, though, you know, if schools or GPs don't want to engage or deliver the message that we're going to try to make as easy for them to deliver and to support, that is where the challenge sits. So there's something about we will do as much as we possibly can from the end that we're in. And we think these 3 contracts will deliver added value in that space because we get more of a mobilised system that way. Yes, absolutely, parent carers. There are 2 points in these contract awards that are really critical. 3. One we've already done, which is an awful lot of engagement, voice work, working with stakeholders and partners, huge amounts of work. The next bit will be the evaluation, which absolutely I take your note around parent carers, and yes, we should have them involved. The other really critical bit is the mobilisation phase. We want to do mobilisation really different this time from 25 years in the game. I want to do it very, very differently, and we want it to be really inclusive with everybody involved to help mobilise and understand actually what these contracts and the potential of these contracts have. Yes, so the data that we have for you in terms of the waiting times for assessment and then treatment, it isn't good enough at all. Nobody should be waiting 18 weeks or over 18 weeks. We have seen in Medway, certainly on a Kent and Medway footprint, a significant improvement and a quicker improvement in bringing those weights down than we've seen in any other patch in the Kent and Medway footprint, and for that you should be very proud. But yes, I think there is something, and I said this at the workshop, there's something also about the quality of contact. So the quality of contact at point of asking for help, having assessment, and then the conversation and the constant communication about when treatment may come could be better. You know, that some of the numbers we can say Medway's looking good, but actually there's more that can be done in terms of quality. Is there anything specific from a...
I was just going to say, I guess 2 things. The reduction in the wait times for children and families is relatively new. You know, we have had long waits up until now, so it will take a while before people start to feel that change. And I think one of the other challenges that Sue did talk about at the workshop was the fact that NELF provides both the neurodevelopmental assessments and the mental health. There's quite often a misunderstanding. We know there's extremely long waits for neurodevelopmental assessments, and that sometimes gets mixed up with the mental health as well. And so there's a feeling that, well, there's no point in referring to CAMHS because the waits are so long, when actually that's not borne out in the data. But as I say, so we looked at the data from November last year compared to November the year before, and it was a significant decrease in terms of the wait times. So that's relatively recent in people's minds as well in terms of accessing those services. And now our job is to make sure that we don't see that creep back up again.
Okay. Robbie?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sue, for your report. Just briefly on the data point, I think that there's also a lag in terms of people coming forward to access the service because of the reputation being so slow. So I think as things improve, I think if once the word gets out, you're going to see an uptick in demand. So I too caution the data like you did, Councillor Campbell. My question is about, I think, the crux of how your plan, which I really, really like, is going to succeed or not, and that's in the contracting. My question is about what is the flexibility that's surrounding the inbuilt service reviews? Because to get the benefits of the 10-year, that's great, and I understand that, but then you've got these sort of fixed review points. How much flexibility is in those reviews to allow for things, for example, such as fluctuating funding, such as change of government, demand, and also innovation, and by that I mean recognition of emerging trends in mental health? Because when I was at school, autism went from a novelty and to 10 years later to mainstream. So I had lived experience of how something came out of nowhere, then all of a sudden is now, you know, the biggest thing ever. So what extent is the flexibility in those contracts to compensate for these future risks, and how can we maintain the benefits of the 10-year lock-in? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your question, and really relevant in many ways. The approach that we're taking for a 10-year plus 3, so effectively 13-year contracts, is not normal. Particularly local authorities don't tend to, are able, actually don't, it's not that they don't, they're not necessarily able to commit for that length of time. We're following on the heels of Surrey. Surrey have done something very similar for children's mental health. We're doing it a little bit differently because we're learning from them. Our real passion and driver for that 13-year contract is around stability, particularly in the voluntary sector. Too many times do we see voluntary sector providers deliver innovation, build a workforce, and then that workforce is had to let go or be let go because of short-term contracting. And we think that the voluntary sector and the non-NHS trust sector is going to be an engine room for attracting young local people to be interested in mental health careers, to grow that interest, and over time have some succession planning. So that's the ambition behind it. NHS contracts can be ended early, can end early. They're kind of reviewed on an annual basis. But the service review model that we're putting into our approach gives us an ability to look at the data, to look at actually the amount of money that's going in, consider growth. Growth is important in terms of children's mental health. For the last, since 2015-16, we've seen not an insignificant amount of growth in children's mental health investment. It's nowhere near enough, absolutely nowhere near enough, but incrementally it's had to, or proportionally it's had to see the biggest growth in any NHS investment since 2015. And we believe that is going to continue. So the contracts have to have capacity for financial growth, but also to respond to change. So yesterday I happened to be at a conference and had the real privilege actually to meet the NHS England digital lead, and she was talking about AI, you know, and AI being, you know, a response, soon to be a response in healthcare and for mental health. And it fills me with fear because I'm ignorant in terms of modern technologies, but actually there will come a point probably before the end of this 13-year contract where there will be innovations around that we need to introduce. So it's not just in the digital world, but you are, again, absolutely right. In your lived experience of how our perception and how we consider conditions like autism and eating disorders and self-harm and now disordered eating is a very different and emerging condition with huge levels of demand. So flexibility is really important. Within the contract as well, I don't know if we've specifically laid it out in the paper, but in the Therapeutic Alliance contract, we want to build in an innovation grants program where we are able to, as part of that 3-year cycle, test innovation, test digital responses and appropriateness of that, test different models of working. So it can be tested within that contractual framework And then during that review cycle, additional funding and business cases can be put together to look to kind of change what that offer looks like. So we really want to do something quite different. We want it to be evolving, and actually in many ways the contracting framework has to keep up with us rather than us be bound by the contracting framework. Admittedly, legality is very important in that, but that's kind of the approach that we're taking.
Thank you very much for that answer. I mean, I think if you can pull this off, this will be really, really amazing. You know, it will be very innovative, and certainly, you know, I'm going to go away and look at the Surrey example that you mentioned. Yeah, good luck, and I think it's excellent. I really do. You know, let's fingers crossed.
Yeah, I looked at the Surrey example because it was mentioned in here and I Googled it. It's worth a look, Robbie. But, you know, I am so excited about this, and especially in checking the Surrey example. But one or two things do sort of trouble and concern me a little bit. I'm kind of 3.6 about increasing support to trusted adults. You know, I'm just worried about that, the skill set of those trusted adults. Obviously, like Robbie, you know, I really value lived experience. But, you know, if your child or, you know, to me, my foster children, if they're self-harming, you know, I care about them so dearly. And, you know, 40 years in education does not help me deal with that because I'm too emotionally embroiled in it. And it panics me like, you know, never before. And so that does worry me. You know, the other thing that worries me is how is it all going to be accessible? You know, you're talking about artificial intelligence, but, you know, with our vulnerable families or our, you know, some of my constituents in Luton don't have internet access unless the library's opened. And then, you know, we've had 23 years of Tories in Medway, and they had KPIs. And one famous firm didn't know they had to look after the allotments, but there was a KPI for them, wasn't ever checked. So where is the plan, do, check, please?
Part of the reason I was so pleased that you welcomed us to come and deliver a workshop was to try to help with some of our maturity of thinking and the narrative around children's mental health. Children's mental health is quite often, if I was to ask you all to write down on a post-it what you thought children's mental health was and the boundaries of that, we would come up with something different for each and every one of us. And I appreciated it was really helpful for me to hear the previous speakers with regard to some of the questions around mental health and transitions and the pressures that schools feel as an example. I think we all feel the pressure of our children's mental health because it is overwhelming and it is absolutely scary. But we all have a responsibility to ensure that mental health is everybody's business. It is the new safeguarding in that way that everybody knows what to do if they see a child in need now. There needs to be almost an instinctive and automatic reaction to children who display low-level needs of mental health. I'm not talking about if a child is significantly self-harming, that a trusted adult, be it a parent or someone in school, should be able to know would be able to bring in, you know, appropriate CBT treatment in that moment. But there is something very much about the trusted adults. We need to create a culture of being able to hold children and ensure that their resilience is in the best place possible. And you was talking about that earlier on with regard to SEND and your SEND children, about creating a culture. It's about being culturally cognizant of really good environments where children can thrive. And I think that also talks a bit to your question about accessibility. We are spending hours at the moment writing and rewriting and writing again the specifications that we're talking about, the detail. And in each of the specifications, we are absolutely talking about reasonable adjustments as an example, which, by the way, I hate that term. It's just around acceptance, isn't it? And cultural acceptance. All of those things. And so there will be a requirement for providers to do exactly that, to make sure that they're cognizant of the people that they are serving. And to do that, we think that the best way for them to do that is to build in roles around lived experience, requirements around engagement, requirements around going out and talking to communities and understanding what that's like. So there's a really big role and function that will sit throughout the contracts around know your people, know your population, and actually have a role to move out of that clinic space to help to talk to the adults in the system around what trusted adults can do better, like demystify mental health. Absolutely, and help us get to a more mature, have a more mature understanding, confidence and dialogue around that. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thanks. Can I have Oliver, then George, if that's okay, George?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Joe. So I was looking at Appendix C, which focuses on current population need and demand for services under gender diverse. I was particularly looking under gender diverse, and I think it's very important that it touches both on trans and cisgender respondents. However, I was trying to find if there was a difference in sex diverse. Is there a discrepancy for young men or young women? Because for me, personally, you know, one of the biggest killers for young men is suicide. So I did want to kind of highlight that and see if there's more or less access for young men or young women. What's the data showing?
I love that you're looking at the data, and actually the data, I'm quite proud of that appendix, the fact that we have as much data there that's been pulled by our data analysts, but it's really poor. Actually, we know very little. It's good, but it's really not good enough, and it's just not detailed enough, and that's one of the things we want to kind of answer. We know in terms of mental health and mental health prevalence that girls and boys, males and females, tend to present differently. Boys will have, or males will have, more of an outward behaviour type response, and girls will tend to suffer from more emotional based broadly, but that's not quite right. And you are right, the biggest killer is male suicide, although girls attempt to take their lives an awful lot more. But men tend to complete and are successful in terms of completion. We do see, and we do have some gender statistics in terms of the data that we have, and they sit broadly along the same lines as what you would expect to see in terms of prevalence nationally. I think it's really interesting to understand that something like a third of girls between the ages of 17 to 19 will have a mental health disorder. A third, 1 in 3. That in itself means a girl of that age is a vulnerable group in and of themselves, just by the nature of being female and that age. And they are very most likely to have anxiety. There is a real big question, although I'm not clinical, but there's a real big question around, is that because we have not diagnosed autism well enough in the female population for such a long time that actually what we're seeing is a response to kind of that containment societally. So that's part of that evolution. So yes, we do have that data. We can get that data. We're broadly in line with the national prevalence.
Thank you.
George?
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Sue. I think that was a really, it's a really useful report, and I certainly enjoyed the workshop a few weeks ago, which I found very helpful. It's just a very quick one from me. It's just about communicating some of the changes that are referenced within the report. I'm just interested to know sort of how you're going to be letting service users know about some of those changes, and probably also a question for our officers here at Medway, sort of how we're going to sort of support that as well, please. Thank you.
So, as you'll have seen from the report and also what we talked about at the workshop, we've done an awful lot of engagement already in terms of understanding need and what our service users want from the service. Once the new service is in place, that will form a significant part of the mobilisation, and purposefully the mobilisation period is 6 months, because we recognise this. It's difficult, isn't it? We talk about it as a significant change, but actually when you look, and we talked about this at the workshop, but when you look at what we already have in place, it's not necessarily a significant change, but it's a significant change for our providers in the way in which they interact and how we'll have that interconnection between them and how we'll use that therapeutic alliance to full effect to ensure we're not escalating need, and the specialist services are freed up to support specialist need. But the mobilisation will, for exactly the reasons that Smitha was talking about earlier, in terms of ensuring that our GPs, ensuring that our schools, ensuring that our services know how to refer and what the changes are, but also that young people and families themselves understand how to access support and where to go for that. It will form a significant part of the mobilisation period for the contract, and ensuring that that happens before the contract actually goes live in September 2025.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Vice Chair.
So I move that the committee notes and supports the contracting approach described, and the NHS Kent and Medway continue to provide regular updates to the committee as the work progresses.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Robbie. And everybody else? Agreed? Thank you. Right, item 7, and I think we're going to make some time up here because Donna did cover this earlier. It's the Council Performance and Monitoring Plan.
Yep, thank you, Chair. What I am going to suggest, given the lateness of the hour and the comprehensive narrative you have in this report on performance monitoring and strategic risk summary, it's a mixed picture. All of the reds have been dealt with this evening, so unless you've got any other questions, I would just like to say we accept this, and if anyone has any questions afterwards, then please get back to me. I'm happy to take them. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Committee. Vice Chair.
Catch it with my papers. So I move that the committee notes and considers the Q3 23-24 performance against the measures used to monitor progress against the council priorities.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Paula. And agreed? Thank you. Okay, item 8, capital budget monitoring, round 3.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. Again, conscious of time, so I'll be as brief as I can in the introduction. So this is the kind of third round of capital monitoring presented to the Cabinet on the 13th of February. Overall, there's projected overspend across the Council of 32.6 million. But actually, within the remit of this committee, there's only an underspend of 51,000, so all related to SEND capital schemes. Happy to take questions.
Okay, any questions? No, for me it read really well. So, you know, obviously we've got a slight overspend, but nothing, underspend, sorry, but nothing major, yeah, for a change. Okay, so, Vice Chair.
I move that the committee is asked to note the results of the third round of capital budgeting monitoring for 23-24 and that the management actions to resolve the projected overspend in children and adults. The committee notes that the changes made to the capital programme are set out in 8.1 to 8.3 of this report. And the committee notes that Cabinet, as of the 13th of February 2024, recommended to Council the removal of the following budget relating to a scheme that is complete or no longer required, aiming higher for children with disabilities funded from capital grants.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Smitha. Agreed? Thank you. Okay, budget revenue monitoring, round 3, please. Dave Reynolds again. Yeah, thank you.
So again, I'll be brief in the introduction. So again, this is the third round of revenue monitoring. Went to Cabinet on the 13th of February. The outcome of the process is kind of a projected overspend of £2.4 million across the council, of which around 2.3 million relates to services within the remit of this committee. That's set out in section 5 of the reports, which is on page 187. I will go into a little bit of detail around changes to reserves. So changes to the level of general reserves are set out in section 7. Work has identified about 5.727 million in earmark reserves that are no longer required for their original purpose, which councils have now agreed can be declassified and moved to general reserves. That happened at the council budget meeting last week. So that brings the kind of current level of general reserves to 15.882 million. So should the round 3 projection kind of materialise as it's kind of currently projected at 11.359 million, that would leave the council's general reserve balance standing at only 4.523 million, which is below the minimum balance set by the Section 151 officer. But again, happy to take.
Any questions from the floor? George?
Yeah, it's just a very brief one from me, and thank you, Dave, for the update, and thank you in particular, I know, to Leanne and Donna for the work that you're doing, particularly on this, the overspend, which has come down significantly from where the outturn was earlier in the year. So I just wanted to note that. Just from you, Dave, in terms of those reserves being sort of shifted over, I mean, what's your sort of general view in terms of that? Is that very much, you sort of explained it there, and it was obviously discussed at Cabinet, but is that just very much shifting over to the sort of general reserves for the sort of, you know, for that wider point around ensuring we bolster up the sort of reserves over that 10 million figure, or is it just generally they're happy to be reclassified, was my only question? Yeah, so our reserves are kind of formed into two kind of parts really. So you've got your earmark reserves, which have got a specific purpose, and then you've kind of got the general reserve balance, which is the kind of the rainy day fund, effectively, kind of thing. And so what we've done, conscious that the fact that the earlier rounds of monitoring projected an overspend in excess of that general kind of pot, we've gone through the reserves that had previously been earmarked to make sure that obviously that if they were still required for their original purpose, and if they are no longer required for that original purpose, that's why we propose that they would kind of be reclassified as kind of general reserves, and so would then be available to kind of meet an overspend of the kind of scale that was projected. Obviously, we're still hopeful between now and the kind of the outturn position that comes down a lot. It's not going to come down massively, but hopefully it comes down a little bit more, which kind of gives us a bit more breathing space in general reserves for future years as well. And obviously, over the next kind of medium term, we would be looking to kind of replenish those kind of reserves as far as possible, given the kind of the huge financial challenges that we've kind of currently got. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, I had a kind of similar question, but I just want to thank you and the finance team, really. I mean, you know, there are 140 councils that are bust, you know, and you, I know, will be monitoring this closely, and nobody wants to be in this position, but I know you've been burning the midnight oil and worked your socks off to get to this situation. Thank you.
Yeah, and like I say, it's not a finance thing, it is a collective thing across all the services, not just children and adults, but kind of RCE and the rest of the business support as well. And obviously, council and cabinet colleagues as well. So
yeah, and you know, I think everybody collectively involved has done their best to still make sure that our children matter, which is and social care matters, which is really key for vulnerable children and families. Okay, Vice Chair.
I move that the committee notes the results of the third round of revenue budget monitoring for 23-24. The committee notes that Cabinet instructed the corporate management team to implement further urgent actions to bring expenditure back within the budget agreed by full council. And the committee notes that council at its meeting on the 29th of February 2024 agreed to declassify the following amounts currently held in earmarked reserves and transfer them into general reserves. 4 million held in the South Medway Development Reserve, 1 million held in the Transformation Reserve, and 727,000 held in the Mosaics Form Reserve.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Mark. And is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you, committee. And we're on to the final item on the agenda, which is the work programme. Okay, so Stephanie usually does this bit. Are you okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. The work programme is set out at Appendix A for the committee to note and agree, and Section 4 of the report highlights any changes that have been made. Thank you.
Okay, is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, so Vice Chair.
I move that the committee notes the report and agrees the work programme as set out in Appendix 1 to the report, subject to accepting the proposed changes outlined in italics text on Appendix 1.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is that seconded? Thank you, Marion, and thank you all. Agreed. Thank you. Agreed. Thank you, everybody. What a lovely committee. Have a nice evening, and farewell to Oliver and Donna. You know, I know you're going on to bigger and better things, both of you, but keep in touch, and thank you for all you've done. We will miss you, but you're always going to be welcome. Good night.